IB Nation, what's going on? Welcome to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are here on a Monday, so of course it is Little Notre Dame Recruiting Hour with myself, Ryan Roberts, Director of Scouting here at irishbreakdown.com, joined by my guy over there, Sean Davis, Recruiting Analyst as the site, as well as one of the co-hosts of the Lucky Lefty Podcast with former Notre Dame signal caller, Malik Zaire. You can follow that podcast at CFB Nation on anywhere that you get your favorite podcast. You'd also search it on YouTube, Lucky Lefty Podcast, to be able to follow their live show where they go. And there was a nice little rant about the Marcus Freeman and Jared Parker press conference that was on there today. And I know we'll probably be asked a ton about that. We'll hit the mailbag at the end, folks. Make sure to put the MB in front of the conversation so that we can star that for the mailbag portion, which will be the second segment of today's show. The first segment, though, Sean, one that I am excited about, man, because it is a position that I hold near and dear to my heart. That's the linebacker position. So we're going to talk about the 2024 class for Notre Dame, the state of the linebacker board as we see it. We're going to hit a lot of names today. We're going to watch a lot of film. It's going to be a lot of fun here, obviously, on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, being able to look at the future potentially of Notre Dame football. But, Sean, I will not lie to anybody here. I look at this board. I look at the state of the coaching staff, some things that we've been talking about a lot. The linebacker board's a little bit of a wild card right now, Sean. A lot of talented players on the board, but I would be lying to everyone out there in the Notre Dame space if I said I am 100% confident in how this class is going to finish out for Notre Dame. A lot of talent, but there are certainly some question marks for linebacker recruiting in 2024.
Deep position in your as you watch film and we start to build not only the guys that Notre Dame is interested in, but we just look across the country. It's a pretty deep position nationally. It really is, especially when it comes to the flexibility of guys that you can even project to move inside if they're projecting as a safety type, rover type. Maybe Notre Dame is even looking at some of the bigger safeties that we talked about last week as some guys that actually can project to rover or down the line to inside, whether it's, the will or middle linebacker. So it's just interesting the way the board begins to break out.
Well, Sean, it's because me and Brian, I think we're talking about this the other day, and I think this is a great way to start the class, is that 2024 is a very interesting linebacker cycle, to your points, because there's a lot of really talented and long athletes on the board.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say it's a top-heavy group, but I would say there's a lot of depth in this class. Like, there's a lot of dudes I'm like, there's another 6'3" linebacker that can run. There's another 6'4" linebacker that maybe could even play Viper. Like, there's a lot of talent in this group. Some of it is unrefined, which is interesting. But I think one thing that we need to talk about if you're in Notre Dame's perspective, which I think is interesting, is you've had back-to-back awesome linebacker classes, right?
Yep.
I mean, Nolan Ziegler's not Joshua Burnham in the 2022 cycle is not playing linebacker anymore. He's playing Viper now. Junior Tuihalamaka is also playing some Viper on the defensive line for Notre Dame. But you still had those two in that class. You had Nolan Ziegler. You had Jalen Sneed. The 2023 group is made up of Drake Bowen, Jay Nosbury, and Preston Zinter, all guys that are also early enrollees for Notre Dame this spring. So, I mean, the last 2 years, you have pulled 7 extremely talented linebackers in the 2022 and 2023 cycles. So what I think is interesting is that 2024, I think you can take some gambles on some kids, right? I think this is one where you don't need an immediate guy that can come in and be a dog from day one. You can take maybe a 6'3" athletic type who's maybe a couple years from playing, incredible upside, but maybe the floor is not as substantial as maybe like a Drake Bowens is, for instance, right? So I think that this is an interesting class for Notre Dame because I think it does match up with what they need. They can take some gambles in the 2024 class and say, hey, that guy might not be a contributor in 2024 season, but 2025, 2026, they could be a dude if developed properly. So that's why I'm looking at this class, and I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of really high-level talent. It's just not a lot of, like, high-floor guys, if that makes sense.
And it seems like they're casting a much wider net, in my opinion. I think the previous 2 classes, like you said, they identified the guys they want, and they went and got on, developed relationships early, and were able to get them in the class. And the linebacker position pretty much has been done probably earlier than any other position for Notre Dame, which makes sense with the head coach being who he is.
Yeah.
And his guy and he changed that immediately as the defensive coordinator, right?
Yep.
That was the first position he identified that there needs to be an upgrade in length and athleticism. And he started that trend and it continued on into the 22 class. So, 23 class. For the 24 class, they're casting a much wider net, diversity, different types of linebackers that we're going to look at today. And there's a little bit of something for everybody, right?
Yes.
I'm going to be checking out the chat to see, but I think certain people are going to jump at certain film in the chat, and others are going to jump at other players when they see them on film. So it should be interesting to see how IB Nation falls in love with the prospects that we show today.
And I love the projection of some of these guys too, because we've already talked about Joshua Burnham's playing Viper full time. Junior Tuilamak is playing some Viper already.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the more athletic pieces you get on the second level, the more opportunities you have to also transition guys to Viper, transition former Vipers to maybe big ends. Big ends now become interior defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a trend, whether we talk about guys that are NFL players or college football players. That trend has really started to unfold before our eyes more and more recently. Like corners become safeties. Outside linebackers become inside linebackers. Linebackers become Vipers. Vipers become strong side defensive ends, and so on and so forth. I think that's the maturation of the position. The game is getting faster, which means that you have to counteract that, especially off defensively. So I think that's what I look like, man, and it's going to be interesting, man. I'm really looking forward to it, and we're going to obviously look at some film here today. We're going to break this up basically into two different segments to start the show, and then we'll have the mailbag at the end, Sean. We're going to talk about what the priority list might look like for Notre Dame, and again, this could always change. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks, but Notre Dame continues to add more and more talented linebackers to the board, right? So the priority list might very well change over the next few weeks. It could. There might be a guy where you get super high traction with quickly. Maybe you didn't think you would. They move to the top of the list. Maybe you'll lose traction with another. They move down to just kind of the secondary board. But we're going to talk about what we think is more of the priority players so far in 2024 for Notre Dame. And Sean, I think that we should start. It's an interesting conversation because Notre Dame just missed on his teammates in the 2024 cycle. And that was, of course, Peyton Woodyard, who was a very talented safety, out of St. John Bosco out there in California. St. John Bosco, tremendous football program, just won the state championship at their level out there in California, beat Mater Dei in an epic game down the stretch of the season. So they missed on Peyton Woodyard, Notre Dame did. He ended up at Georgia. We are told by sources close, trusted sources, that his teammates, Kingston Villamo Asa, who is a 2023 linebacker listed at 6'3", 230 pounds, Sean. Again, we're going to play some film that here as we kind of work through it. But this is a really talented kid, Sean, and I'll be very honest about this. When I talked about this a little bit in shows and on the message board in the past, Kingston, because I've met Kingston in person before. I've talked to him several times now outside of, just in person. This is a very soft-spoken kid, man. Very respectful, great kid. I mean, he's a yes, sir type dude, right? But he doesn't let much off the chest, right? Like, he leaves everything very close to the vest. He's one of those kids. He's a silent assassin type of linebacker, right? Like, he's not going to say much. He's not going to talk much, but he's just going to get stuff done. And he is a top 150, pretty much consensus across the board player in the class of 2024, top 100 by a couple different platforms. A lot of big-time programs are coming after Kingston. Despite that, Sean, Notre Dame is they're pretty happy with their standing with Kingston right now. He's been on campus before, which, again, great for a California kid to get on campus. He meets all the values that you would expect out of a Notre Dame player. Very soft-spoken, very intelligent, studious, all that great stuff, right? Great character. And there is a lot of optimism that he could be a legitimate target for Notre Dame and that they could close on him whenever he eventually does make his decision. I will be forthcoming. I'm not as optimistic as our sources closer to Notre Dame. I'm not. Because I think that, yes, I think Kingston likes Notre Dame. Been on board with that. I also think he likes other schools. And I don't know how far he's going to stray away from the West Coast. I just don't know that, man. I just don't know. So I'm a little less optimistic than maybe some people, some sources that we have are. But regardless, I understand why he is a priority for Notre Dame. Because this kid is 6'3", 230, can run well, but man, he is violent football player. I really do like Kingston, man. They grow some dudes out there in St. John Bosco.
I watched the film, and the one thing that jumps out to me is his anticipation, right? Like, if you guys haven't already, follow Ryan Roberts and all of his NFL draft stuff he does for CFB Nation, you start to pick up terms when talking about prospects and when you watch film because he's so smart at it. His anticipation and what he sees and his ability to go. Like, we've talked about the Notre Dame linebackers and say, man, they have to be activated. It seems like they have to be activated with the call or have to be activated with some type of blitz or something. It seems like he understands, like his delay blitz. He's in coverage. He sees the running back is staying in. Here he comes. He recognizes that. For me, that's the one thing that stood out from watching the early part of his film. And then you talk about his speed, how he gets to the ball, and he gets there with mean intentions. And then I think one or two of the first clips were like his drop coverage, and he had a pick six. That was something else. So he has extreme versatility at the linebacker position. You can bring him off the edge. He can play inside. There's a lot of different things and different positions he can play, which for me, he's going to play early when he gets to Notre Dame or if he gets to Notre Dame. Like, I don't think this is a guy that you watch sit for a full year and a half. I think this is the type of guy by the time it gets to week 6 or 7, he's on the field and getting 15 to 20 snaps. He's just that good.
Sean, can I make a comp here and you tell me if it's ridiculous or if you agree with it?
Yeah.
So, just from a body type perspective and a game perspective, because we see him now, he plays all over the second level. He's been on line of scrimmage a little bit. Yeah. I see Junior Tuihalamaka, but in a more souped up version. Like, I think he's a bit more athletic Junior Tuihalamaka, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I see, man. Like, I really think that he diagnosed the play so quickly. I think he's got great eyes.
He does.
Incredible instincts for a linebacker his age. And the one thing I love, Sean, because this is the disconnect that happens with linebackers sometimes. They see it, they read it. You know that they see it because their eyes in the right spot, but then they don't trigger. They don't go, right? They hesitate. Mm-hmm. There's no hesitation to how Kingston plays, man.
No.
He gets downhill in a hurry. And I think I think it may have been, Antoine Johnson commented on his coverage skills. And I agree, Antoine. I think Kingston is actually a guy that really holds his own in pass coverage. I don't know if he's ever going to be like a crazy upside pass coverage guy, but like he looks smooth transitioning. He's got pretty quick feet. He's able to stay attached. And I mean, look at that physicality coming off the edge, man. Like here he is at fullback, getting downhill a little bit, which is always fun. Oh, man. Yeah. Pancaking a dude halfway in the end zone, never a bad thing. But, I mean, Sean, I think it's the biggest thing for me is that he is considered, along with Peyton Woodyard also, another quick note, he's considered a leader of this defense, which is silly talented, man. Like we talk about Peyton, we talk about Kingston. They also have Jason Mitchell, who would just transferred over from Sarah High School, who's going to play on the back end this year as well at safety, who's another key target for Notre Dame at the safety position. I actually had an update on him earlier this week at irishbreakdown.com, and it's going to be an impactful spot, I think, to try to get into California more and more because Notre Dame's had their wins in the past, but it's not a place that they frequented a ton. And St. John Bosco is definitely not a school, Sean, for me. Like, they just haven't gotten into St. John Bosco. And that's one of the premier programs in all of high school football. Like, you need to get into those type of places.
Well, this is when you take advantage of a lull, right? Whether it's a particular school having a bad year or being a disconnect with the defensive coordinator. I just don't think a lot of coaches or big-time players out in California are exactly excited about Alex Grinch's defense at USC, right? Because, look, let's be real. Modern day Bosco, that's USC. When USC is at its height, they get everybody that comes from those schools, all the best players normally. And I think what you're seeing with guys that are coming from that school that are actually going to other places or have other schools at the top of their list, you're seeing that disconnect. They're watching that USC defense is saying to themselves, like, yeah, I could go there and play early, but is that a benefit to me to go play early just because they don't really have the bodies? Or do I go somewhere else that I know I can be developed and get played at my best and help me get to the next level? So, it's one of those things where there's a lull there. Notre Dame has an opportunity to take advantage of it. And hopefully, with a player like this, they can get him on campus for another visit during the spring and ultimately close the door and lock him into that 24 class.
And I think that's going to be incredibly beneficial and I think it's going to be indicative of how serious the interest is, Sean. I think it's a great note. He's been on campus at Notre Dame before, which is great. Yeah. Getting a California kid on campus is a fantastic first step. Yeah. Talk about Jason Robinson getting to Boston College for the snow game, and that one's looking a lot more likely than maybe it once did as he was coming to USC, right? Yeah. I think that you look at that and say that's a great step, but in order for it to be a real thing, to be serious, you need to get him on campus again this spring, this summer. That will surely show, that'll be an indicator of, is Kingston like Notre Dame or does he love Notre Dame? That's a big difference, right? That's a big differentiation. So hopefully getting back on his campus will be big for Notre Dame. We'll see obviously how everything turns out, but it's going to be interesting to watch. Sean, I think we also need to note each one of these players, there's 3 different linebacker spots in Notre Dame's defense. I probably should have kicked off with this, but whatever. Middle linebacker, weak side linebacker, and then a rover. We're talking about all 3 of those positions today. We're not just talking about inside linebackers. We're also talking about the rover position, which is going to lead me now to the next guy who, Sean, I'll be very honest, he's one of my favorite players in the 2024 class of anybody. That includes Notre Dame targets. Mm-hmm. That includes just players that Notre Dame is not targeting at all. This is Thailand Singleton, who is a linebacker out of Manny High School in Louisiana. I know what you're thinking. LSU's backyard. The same backyard that just got us Jay Nosberry in the 2023 cycle. I have talked to Thailand several times. Thailand Singleton fits Notre Dame, and I think he really likes Notre Dame. I truly do. Last time I spoke to him, he was setting up a visit, hopefully to Notre Dame sometime this spring. If not, I do believe he'll make it this summer. And I wouldn't be surprised if after that, and this is me reading into it, this is not directly from Thailand, but if the visit goes well, whenever he makes his unofficial, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an official visit to Notre Dame at some point. I would not be surprised about it. This kid is the rover that we're talking about today. I do know that there's some people, though, Sean, that also think that this kid could play will linebacker eventually if his body's developed properly. But, man, I love this kid, man. Look at this speed, Sean. That's the speed we need, buddy. That's the speed we need. I legitimately think, I don't know if you agree with this. Love to hear your insight on it. I think he could play safety on the college level. I do. But as a rover, kid's special in my opinion. He could be a really good safety at the next level, or he could be special at rover in the box.
You know who he reminds me of?
Let me hear it.
Oh, man.
Brian said Brandon Hillman last time I talked to him, but I don't know if you see that at all.
Brandon Hillman, but I'm like projecting him to college as far as how he can be used.
Yeah.
The first name is escaping me. The Simmons kid from
Isaiah
Clemson.
Simmons.
That's what Isaiah Simmons. There you go. Yeah. Because they used him as a safety / rover / whatever they wanted to do with him, they were able to do it. If you have this type of guy on your defense, you can put him wherever you want to put him.
Yeah.
Right? Because that where look, you go watch LSU play. Tyrann Mathieu played linebacker in certain formations for LSU.
So did Jamal Adams.
Yes, yeah. The way they used him. So it's all about the talent and the coach being able to utilize the talent. So he's just a talent. I wouldn't even put a position on him, Ryan. Just get him, and we'll figure out how to best use him, whether it's blitzing, putting him in the box, putting him back at safety, spine the quarterback, whatever. You just get the talent and let him do his thing.
I have a little bit of a thought on Thailand Singleton too, Sean, and I know people are going to be like, that's a little crazy or whatever it is, but I have a better feeling on Thailand Singleton standing with Notre Dame than I do of any linebacker on this list today, in my opinion. Again, I think there's going to be a preconceived. Here he is playing cornerback, by the way, because why not? Right,
And
with
he's,
this
and
type
he's
of athlete.
comfortable. He's
Yeah, man.
comfortable.
Yes, he is
He's in the slot now.
Sean, I mean, honestly, man, this is a modern day second level defender. Like, you don't see these dudes 10, 15 years ago, all due respect to the game.
No.
This guy can run for days, man. This is a crazy athlete, both explosively, straight line speed. It's all incredible. But my original point is, and again, I'm not predicting him to Notre Dame ultimately, because recruiting can go so many different ways. And I don't know how, I don't know how visits are going to go. I don't know people around him enough at this point. But I'm telling you, Thailand Singleton would fit at Notre Dame 100%. And I think Thailand Singleton really likes Notre Dame. So I actually feel pretty positively about where Notre Dame is with Thailand Singleton. And I'll be more honesty, right? More transparency. I don't feel great about most of the guys on this list today. I don't.
Unfortunately.
But I feel pretty good about where they are with Thailand. I think they've done a good job with Thailand. I think that they have been in on him. I think they've been making him a priority. I feel that he thinks that he is a priority. He feels it, which is huge. And he's one of those kids from Louisiana, like we just saw with Jaden Osbury, that, yes, everything about him says SEC. Everyone about him says you're staying in the Southeast. Look at that athleticism. Look at that play style. Look where you go to high school. But there's something about Thailand Singleton that for me says that's a Notre Dame kid at the ends. That's a Notre Dame kid. So we'll see how it all shakes out. We'll see what it ends up looking like. We'll see if Notre Dame can land Thailand Singleton. But there's something there, Sean, where I look at him and say, I think that's him, man. I think he has a chance to end up at Notre Dame. There's something about it.
Ultimate question is going to be, who's going to be the main recruiter? Is it going to be Marcus Freeman? How much is Max Bullock going to be involved, the new linebacker GA? How much is your defensive coordinator, Al Golden, going to be involved? Do you allow Chris O'Leary to get involved in it? So it's going to be interesting. Marcus Freeman, as always, says he's the main recruiter for everyone in the program. But Al Golden is doing a pretty good job. Wouldn't you say this? He can identify good players. Now, whether or not he can recruit them, get them to Notre Dame, we have to wait and see. But he can definitely identify some talented young men.
Now, so I mean, we're going to talk about a few guys in the news section of this podcast later. Where, I mean, yeah, man. If you told, like, if I would be very honest and be like, hey, I really like that offer, right? Like, I think that they did a tremendous job identifying that player. I don't think that there's a lack of. I think that Al Golden has a great football mind and eye for the game. I do. It's just, the recruiting efforts is something that we just have a lot of questions with right now. And it's okay to have those questions right now, man. Prove me wrong. I hope Al Golden proves me wrong. I hope he comes out and he lands 3 of these dudes and he continues this linebacker trend that we've seen over the last couple of years. It's just not where we are right now. Just not where we are right now. But he can change it. I hope he does. At the end of the day, someone on Twitter accused me of wanting the worst for the Notre Dame program. Yeah, right, man. I want Notre Dame to be a national championship every year for the years of or every year to come. Stop with that. I just want people to be held accountable. I don't think that's a bad thing to hold people accountable. That's how growth is maintained. That's how growth is elicited. So we'll see what happens, man. But ultimately, I like where Notre Dame is with Thailand Singleton. You mentioned an interesting note, Sean. You mentioned Max Bullock, who is, of course, the new graduate assistant who will be working with the linebackers this year. Formerly coached at Alabama as a graduate assistant, was a star linebacker for Michigan State, also spent some time in the NFL with the Houston Texans. I think it's a great hire, by the way. I don't know if you agree with that, but I thought it was a really slam dunk hire for where you were.
Everything I've heard about the young man, he's from Traverse City up there in Michigan, which I believe is the home for, is that Josh Burnham that's from Traverse City as well? That's what I thought. Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So that's that connection. And I hear great things from him, from a lot of people. I actually talked to one of his former teammates that I know that works in the business, the radio business up here in Chicago, and he raves about this guy as a teacher and as a recruiter. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
And we had a great question about the linebacker. So we actually had, I'm going to bring it up now, USMA 87 with a great question. He said, will the linebacker GA, that is Max Bulla, of course, be involved in recruiting? I wasn't sure how much they can do. Yes, they can be involved in recruiting. They're not going to be out on the road, but I mean, when they come for visits, when they talk ball, I mean, the biggest thing, and we're going to talk about Peyton Pierce here for a second, because I think it's a great segue, Sean, is that Peyton Pierce had developed a great relationship with James Laurinaitis, who, of course, went to Ohio State this offseason. Great relationship with him. Max Bulla can be that same type of resource in recruiting, being able to sit down when recruits come on campus, talking ball, selling the program. This is how a linebacker sees the game, former, high-level, 3-time All-Big Ten player, playing the NFL for a handful of years. There's a lot of value that Max Bulla can bring to that conversation. So, yes, they can be involved, US. It's just they're not going to be on the road recruiting, obviously. They're not going to be out and about with the rest of the position coaches. They have the restrictions in that regard, but GAs can be involved for what they are able to do. Yes, absolutely. But, Sean, that's a great conversation piece, though, because you mentioned Max Bulla. I want to talk about Peyton Pierce, who's out of Lovejoy, Texas, 6'2", 230 pounds. I'm going to play some of his film. It's going to be sophomore film, actually, because he only played in a couple games during his junior year because he was dealing with an injury. And Sean, this is an interesting situation. If we would have talked about this about 3 weeks, a month ago, I would have said this was the kid I feel best about by far, like no conversation, because of the job James Laurinaitis has done recruiting this kid. He, after his visit during junior day, spoke so highly of Coach Laurinaitis and be able to sit down with him, watch film, talk ball, and that relationship meant so much to him. And honestly, I felt like he was almost I don't want to say foregone conclusion, but I thought Notre Dame was the easy front runner. Like, it wasn't even close, in my opinion, at that point. Well, things have shifted a little bit since then, Sean. James Laurinaitis leaves, and there are now a lot of question marks, because the point blank period to it is that James Laurinaitis was the main recruiter for Peyton Pierce. That's the point blank to it. He had mentioned Marcus Freeman, which every recruit mentions Marcus Freeman, to your points, right? He's a dog on the recruit trail. He mentioned Al Golden very briefly. And since the loss of James Laurinaitis, I don't have a great vibe on Notre Dame standing here, Sean. I think they can recover, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very dependent on efforts. Big effort. Al Golden, Max Bulla, those guys need to step up and step up quick, or else I think they have a chance to lose him. And I think that they had a great standing with him, but I think things have changed a little bit. And I like him, man. This is a true Mike in this system, in my opinion. 6'2", 230. We're watching sophomore film here, Sean. We're watching sophomore film, which is even more impressive. So I think that Notre Dame still has a shot, but they are definitely not in the position that they were a couple weeks ago.
Once again, when we turn this film on and we get the kids that are on their radar or kids that they've offered, we turn on the film and we say, man, okay, I see why. And we've yet to be disappointed, but the disappointment is we felt like this kid was, if you won't say, I felt like he was pretty much in the bag. That's the way I felt. Like, oh, okay, like we got one that's on the way. And then James Laurinaitis goes to Ohio State. And, that was a lull. But like you said, Max Bullock, everything I've heard about him is that he's a great recruiter. He's great at it. And he's going to get even better. So hopefully things kind of leveled off rather than dipping when it comes for Peyton Pierce. They just kind of leveled off. Maybe he took a wait-and-see approach. And once he gets an opportunity to talk to Max Bullock or anyone else that's, spearheading his recruitment, he locks in. Because, you could talk about players loving particular coaches and everything, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame is Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is Notre Dame. And I believe not only Peyton, but the people around him understand what that means.
Yep. I mean, and at the end of the day, because I know Nathan Milton, who is formerly Milton fan, just asked on here. He said, Ryan, is Ohio State the front runner for Peyton now? Milton, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say this is my opinion on this one, Sean, and everybody out there. I think that Peyton, please, let's not talk about Peyton Bone on the shadow anymore. Peyton Pierce, I would say it was Notre Dame, a nice little gap, and then a few other schools, right? Like the Oklahomas of the world and some schools like that. I think the issue now is that the loss of James Laurinaitis has kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. And with that fact in mind, I think that Ohio State is one of the schools that are in perfect situation now where with James Laurinaitis and that relationship that he's developed already, coming in and just kind of continuing to present the person that he is, and now has the opportunity to show that Ohio State is maybe a better option for him. I think Ohio State does have a big opportunity to sell it to him real quick. I do. I think they're one of those teams now that, since it's a little more open now, they have the chance to be high in this conversation. But I wouldn't say right now this is like Ohio State's the leader. No, I don't think so. I think that it's just more open than it once was. Like Sean said, and I kind of alluded to, I think that Notre Dame was here, and then there was probably like 4 or 5 schools that were here, if you're watching on YouTube, right? Like there was just a bit of separation there. I just think now it's a lot more cloudy, and there's a lot more schools that are a little bit more packed together than they once were. So that's where it is. So, we'll see. I think Notre Dame could get back into it. I think that if there's effort put on the recruiting trail with a Peyton Pierce, I think Peyton's dad really likes Notre Dame. I think Peyton really likes Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, Peyton Pierce and his family are ones that are built off of relationships. And the core of this, the foundation of this, is that his main relationship with Notre Dame was James Laurinaitis. That was his number one relationship here. So at the end of the day, they'll have to get back in this conversation very quickly, but it's just very muddled right now as far as, I don't think there's a clear leader. But Notre Dame still has a chance. Again, they just need to get back into the race, man, because I think we see this film and we know this is a good football player, man. It's a really, really good football player. I mean, you see him on the edge. You see him playing Mike. You see him play a little bit of Will at sometimes in this. Like this is a versatile second-level defender that I think fits into a really nice Mike linebacker on the next level. So, like Peyton Pierce, a ton. And Notre Dame is still going to push for him hard. It's just about making up ground that you may have lost a little bit of momentum there. Sean, I want to talk about the next guy. A guy that was actually pretty recently offered about a month ago. It's been, it hasn't been too long. I want to talk about Cole Sullivan, who is a linebacker out of Central Catholic in Pennsylvania. Now, if you're out there and you're like, Central Catholic in Pennsylvania, that sounds very familiar. And it should. Because Notre Dame has frequented the school a decent amount, shown in the past. You talk about the Highness Brothers, Kurt, and now obviously Donovan Highness is on the team currently. I think most people, I think, in this chat, because I know we have a lot of people that follow the program closely, they probably also remember David Adams, who was a really good linebacker coming out of high school, but he had some shoulder injuries at Notre Dame, was forced to retire a little bit early. They were also recruiting Anthony Specca, who is a linebacker that is now committed to Penn State, that they were recruiting for a little bit there as well. They were in a really good spot early on with Anthony Specca, and then they kind of just made a decision that, there was probably other linebackers they liked a little bit better. So he ends up at Penn State. Well, Sean, they have taken a liking to another linebacker on Central Catholic. This is Mr. Cole Sullivan, who I'm going to get his film up here in a second. He is much more of you're going to see him playing basically a rover position for Central Catholic. He's playing out in space, overhang position. But we have gathered from sources that Notre Dame actually likes him as an inside linebacker at the next level. They don't see him as the rover potentially on the Notre Dame level. So I think he's an interesting piece, Sean. So for this one, I mean, honestly, I would like to just watch film with you for a second, man, and just be like, this is what we like, this is what we see, because we have not really talked about him on this podcast before. Like, we really haven't. So, but he's a guy that Notre Dame needs to know, because he's a guy that Notre Dame fans need to know, because he's a guy that Notre Dame does like a lot. So this is Cole Sullivan, Central Catholic. You're going to see him out in space a ton. Sean, he's got kind of that wiry frame. He's a taller kid, listed at 6'3". I think he's got some good foot quickness, man. I think he moves pretty well in space. Here you see him working off the edge a little bit. I think the length is pretty nice there. I think there's some developmental potential for Cole Sullivan. I do.
Yeah. What was ironic? Because we looked at his rankings. I remember when he got his offer and announced his offer. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was right after the Laurinaitis news. And he was one of the first guys that was offered by Al Golden. And we're like, okay. It's like, no ranking? Like, man, we were questioning, like, man, is this a reach? And then we started to watch his film, and we're like, okay. Because his film shows one of the things, look, what's been a weakness for the Notre Dame linebacker core? Playing in space. Yeah. And his all of his film is pretty much showing that he can play in space. So it feels a need, and it shows that the staff is very aware of what they inherited and what they currently have, and what they need to bring in.
So it's interesting, man, because again, you're looking at this player and you're like, that's a rover, because he's literally playing rover, and he's pretty rangy and he's got some length to him.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame likes him as an inside linebacker. Like, they see him more as like a will linebacker. He's a true inside guy, which is, again, I think it goes back to our initial conversation of guys fitting, kind of projecting to different spots and translating that athleticism in different areas.
How do you feel about that? Like, you get a kid that is obviously comfortable in space. He's obviously comfortable in space.
Yeah.
And then moving him to the line of scrimmage. Like,
if you have instincts and you have physicality, I mean, at the end of the day, you can do it. I just more want to see, like, how does he see the game? Is he like right there? He saw that game. He saw that play very quickly.
Fast. Yeah.
Good eyes there, man. And the more you see him play, you're like, okay, here's some more reps working inside. This isn't a guy that's just used in space. He's just right now a 6'3", 200-pound linebacker. That's what he is. So he plays out in space a little bit. But
he's a Martin Stonebreaker, bro.
You think so?
Oh, dude, Stonebreaker would identify him and Ned Bolcar on the inside would just identify and just. I encourage people. Barry Alvarez's best game, without a doubt, was the USC game in '88. Without his best call game, without question. You just go watch the first half, and the ways he just took Rodney Peete just totally out of that game. I'm like, and it was his linebackers. He just allowed his linebackers to disrupt everything. I felt like they blitzed every down, Double R. It just looked like they blitzed every down, which is incredible with the passing game that the Trojans had. So when I watch this kid, he reminds me of that type of linebacker that has that type of recognition and just goes. Yeah. And once again, look, the kids that we're showing today, if they get in a uniform, I don't think we'll be on post-game shows saying, man, I just wish it's obvious these guys just won't activate. They just won't come downhill. That's not the problem with the guys we're showing today on film. All of these young men seem very comfortable.
Sean, you made a great point, too, that Notre Dame has had linebackers that may struggle in space a little bit. One of the reasons for that is a lack of length. Mm-hmm. One thing that Cole Sullivan brings to the game is that he is long, man. He's 6'3" with some length. I mean, you see him disrupt passing lanes a ton. You see the length and explosiveness he has. He's a very interesting player in that mold because, I mean, you're going to go potentially from, let's call where we are right now, right? You have J.D. Bertrand, who's right around 6 foot. You have Jack Kaiser, who might be 6'1", somewhere in that ballpark, right? But now you're talking about Nolan Ziegler was 6'3". You're talking about, a Jane Osbury that has really good length for his position. And you're talking about, if you're able to get a Cole Sullivan, now you're talking about 6'3", like Preston Sinter was 6'3". Like you are getting a lot longer on the second level, which is one good thing here. Here he is coming down on kickoff, which is another thing that I think you could see from Cole Sullivan relatively early in his career is that he could be
a long snapper.
Well, I want him running down on kickoffs. I want him running down on kickoffs, man.
Long snappers have fantastic NFL careers, man.
Nothing wrong with it, man.
They last about 10 years. They play limited minutes or limited snaps.
Sean, I don't know if you also I think the one interesting thing that it's lost a little bit. It's lost a little bit, but when you're talking about these types of kids, and you talk about the Highness Brothers, for instance.
Yeah.
Those kids bring a personality to the game and a hunger to the game because of where they come from, in my opinion. They do. Right. They're Pittsburgh kids. They're hard workers, most of them. Yeah. And I think that Cole Sullivan does bring some of those traits. I know that it's a really cliche thing, right? And it's definitely a putting everyone in the same box, a stereotyping thing. Like, I get that. And I'm not trying to stereotype people. I'm really not. But typically when you talk about football players that were born and raised and played football in Pittsburgh, you're talking about tough football players, man. And at linebacker, at defensive line, there's a lot of variance to having those types of players, in my opinion. I think there's a lot that could help there.
I forgot I was on mute for a second.
I wasn't looking at the screen either, so I couldn't even tell you. My apologies.
No, man, you were spot on. Yeah.
So, Sean, that's kind of where we are with as far as what the big board looks like. A couple quick notes on some other guys on the board before we start looking at some of these fresher recruits, guys that have been offered more recently, which I think will be a lot of fun. Because that one's going to be more – I'll have a couple updates as far as like visits and stuff in that conversation. But that's going to be fun because we get to just talk about players for the first time that we haven't really talked about on this podcast and just watch them film, which I think is going to be a great time. Excuse me. But here is kind of, again, these are guys that are still at the top of the list, I would say, for Notre Dame, Sean, but guys that maybe just isn't as much traction with right now. We just talked about 4 different players where I think Notre Dame's in good to, very good standing with most of those guys. I think they have legitimate chances at Kingston Villamo, Asa, Peyton Pierce, Cole Sullivan, and Thailand Singleton. I think they have legitimate chances with each one of those players. Some other players that are high talents that I just don't think there's a lot of traction with. I just wanted to throw out a Darius Hayes' name real quick from Largo, Florida. Look, at the end of the day, he just committed to the University of Florida about a month and a half ago. I think Notre Dame, tried to keep traction with him. It was, I think they still have intention to keep recruiting him a little bit, but I just don't think that there's enough traction where it's going to make any sense to, kind of have those resources there. So I think they kind of missed their window a little bit with the Darius Hayes. That's just kind of where we're at with the Darius, right? 2 other guys, Sammy Brown from Jefferson High School in Georgia, and then Aaron Childs from Good Counsel, Olney, Maryland. 2 guys, especially Sammy Brown. I think that Notre Dame was actually in a pretty good early spot with Sammy Brown. I think there was a lot of intrigue. He'd been on campus before at Notre Dame. Just don't think that there's enough to pull him out of the Southeast. I just ultimately don't think there is. Aaron Childs, I never really thought there was that much traction with at all. Sammy Brown, I do think that there was some for Notre Dame, and I actually thought they were an okay standing early, but I just don't think that they're going to get him out of the state of Georgia ultimately. So that's just kind of where we are with a couple of those guys. Really good football players. They're going to be really good football players on the college level.
Yeah.
Just don't think Notre Dame has much of a shot. I love our Darius Hayes. Sean, can we talk about
Darius
this?
Hayes it goes without saying. The day he posted that he was committing, it was like a gut punch, right? Because he was pretty much the gift we were looking for under the Christmas. You know how you write out the Christmas list? And if you had to choose one out of whatever you wrote down, if I couldn't get anything else, this is the one. That's kind of the feeling with Darius Hayes at the linebacker position.
And quick shout out to the Florida Gators, Sean. Yeah. Their linebacker class in 2024 is stupid, man. They got a Darius Hayes and Miles Graham. I'm like, I knew they were going to get Miles. Notre Dame tried to recruit Miles Graham, and I think Notre Dame actually did a pretty good job with Miles Graham early. But I mean, his dad went to Florida, right? Ernest Graham went to Florida, and it was just that was home for him.
Much.
So yeah, it was too much. But Florida's done a really good job recruiting linebacker, which is good for them. It's awesome for them. But Sean, I really want to start in on some of these kids that Notre Dame has offered pretty recently, within the last month, maybe a month and some change. A lot of linebackers have been added to this list. We're going to show some film on these guys, and we're also going to talk about position that they potentially profile to best. So, Sean, let's go out west for a second, man. I'm going to start with Yelm High School out in the state of Washington. This young man's name is Brayden Platt, who this is an intriguing football player. We're just going to watch some film, and I'll give a little bit of just kind of the particulars about Brayden Platt, who is listed anywhere from 6'2", 6'1", 220, 235, somewhere in that ballpark. Plays a lot of running back. As you can see, ran over somebody in space, hurdled someone. Hate how this film's a little bit dark, but it is what it is. There's not much sunlight in the state of Washington, I guess.
Oh, man.
Sean, this kid, though, 6'2", 225, 230 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. Listed at running a 4.65. He is a 200-plus foot javelin thrower in the state of Washington. This kid is a legit high D1 caliber javelin thrower at his level. Like, he can go to basically any school in the country and throw javelin. Any school in the country. He's that type of dude. But of course, he also does that. He can move a little bit, Sean. That's 230 pounds running, man. He can move a little bit, man. He can move a little bit, Mr. Brayden Platt.
It's not even about stadium lights, man. Like, dude, put the light on top of the camera, videographer. Good gracious, give yourself some self-light.
This is one of those, Sean. This is one that I originally watched late night, and I'm just like trying to watch it. I'm like, I can't see anything.
No.
My wife's sleeping. I'm trying to watch some film, and I'm just like, I can't see anything right now. Like, this is where I need to go down and look at the light, because it's just, this film is not great quality. And not because Brayden Platt's not good, because Brayden Platt's a really good football player, man. But can we get some lights in here, man? Get some lights in here. Do something. I know it's always cloudy in Washington, but we got to do this like this, man. This kid's a high-caliber Division I football player. Like, he's a top 100 national recruit by a couple services. Like, he's a good player, man. Yeah. Give him some attention. And I have talked to Brayden in the past. I would say this about Brayden Platt. Oregon has been the team that has been kind of assumed to be the leader for a little bit on Brayden Platt. Last time I talked to Brayden, there was interest in getting to Notre Dame this spring. And I think that could potentially happen. So I'm interested to see how much that changes things, Sean. Because right now, I mean, Notre Dame's starting a little behind the 8 ball, right? Like, they haven't been recruiting him very long. That's just kind of the facts of it. But yeah, I'm happy they're recruiting him, because he's a talented linebacker on the board, man. He's really, really talented. So it's a wait and see as far as what the actual interest is in Notre Dame. He was very happy with the offer, was very receptive of the offer. He's very receptive to media in general, which is good. It's a good thing. That means that he's open to the conversation. It's always a great thing. But out west is probably the more realistic ending point for him right now. But a trip to Notre Dame could change things. Always can.
It's interesting that, you're starting to see these trips line up. March, April 1st is starting to become a big day for Notre Dame, a big weekend for Notre Dame for visits. So the month of April is definitely going to be important. I think I expect a big time visit announcement probably to come within the next week or so. That Notre Dame fans will love to hear.
Notre Dame fans are all upset all the time now, Sean. I don't know if they'll love it, man.
No, we're good. We're good. Regardless of what side of the coin you like, today was closure. Yeah. Closure is not always about everybody walking away with a smile, but today was closure. It's time it's recruiting season. It's time to move on, man. It's time to move on. And we've shown enough film of linebackers today for Notre Dame fans to be really excited about the prospects of these young men coming for a spring visit or a summer visit.
Yes, I think you said that perfectly. So that is Brayden Platt. I think, Sean, for me, I think that he could play Mike or Will because I think he does have enough speed to play Will. I also think, though, that he has a body that I could see him being 240 pounds and being an absolute hammer, right? So I can see both sides of the coin, but he's definitely an inside linebacker. Like, there's no doubt about that. So that is Brayden Platt. Let's move on to our next guy, Sean. A guy me and Brian talked about a little bit. I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks. I can't remember, man. Weeks blend in so much now. It's gross how much weeks blend in. But this young man name is Bodie Calhoun, Sean. Bodie Calhoun.
Bodie.
Bodie. Have you ever seen All That? I was trying to tell Brian about this, and I don't think he knew what I was talking about. But there was an All That. No, actually, no, it's a SpongeBob thing. So there was a SpongeBob thing where SpongeBob said, "I love you, Bodie," and I don't remember why he said it, but it's just always in my head now. It's like, "I love you, Bodie."
Well, dude, you're talking to a humongous SpongeBob fan. So
are you? Yeah.
Oh,
man, my wife might be the biggest SpongeBob fan in the known world, Sean. So I respect
your
that.
wife is she has great taste. Great taste in cartoons, yes.
Yes, she does. And my era was the best era of cartoons as well. So I agree with Bodie Calhoun, who is a linebacker out of Roanoke, Virginia, goes to Patrick Henry High School, Sean. As you see, he's a high academic kid, 4.1 GPA. He is committed to Ohio State for lacrosse, Sean. Committed to Ohio State for lacrosse. But he is open to potentially playing linebacker at the next level. And there's a lot of schools now that are doing their homework and offering Bodie Calhoun. Notre Dame offered a few weeks ago. And at first, Sean, I'm not sure how I felt about this one. I'll be very honest. I saw the first few clips. I'm like, no, it looks okay. But then I think the more and more you watch, you're like, oh, okay. This kid's got a little burst to him. He's got a little bit of closing speed. He's got some length for sure. He reminds me a lot of, do you remember Phil Picciotti from the 2023 cycle that Notre Dame was on for a little bit? He ended up at Oklahoma. I really liked Phil Picciotti, though. This reminds me of Phil Picciotti. This is a true middle linebacker, man. 6'3", 220-plus pounds. This kid's going to be 6'3", 235, 240 before all said and done. And I think he's got good closing speed from a tackle-to-tackle guy. I don't necessarily want him working in space a ton, though, right? Like, I want him getting downhill and working tackle to tackle. Like, that's what I want to see from him. But, I mean, I think there's a lot to work with here, Sean. I think Bodie Calhoun's a very, very interesting football player.
Yeah, like I said, I felt the same way, and I'm feeling the same way watching it a second time. He's a really good player. He's a really good player. Let me tell you something. This is when you wish you watched his film first, right? Because when you watch some of the other kids' film that we presented today, and you get to film like this, you say, oh, okay. I think if I had watched this film first, I'm like, oh man, yes, I love this kid. I like what he can do. He's specifically at this position. But Ryan, we've watched so many guys on film that look really good in space.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like I'm kind of stuck with that, right? To whereas to get Bodie Calhoun would be, without sounding disrespectful, a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Out of the guys we looked at today. You've already talked about not being able to have Sammy Brown, being at a certain place of stagnation with Peyton Pierce or Darius Hayes being off the board. Then guess what? Aaron Childs. Look, Thailand Singleton, yes, please. Kingston, yes, please.
Yes, please.
Brayden Platt, yes, please.
Yes, please. That's funny.
It is what it is.
Well, Sean, let me show you a football player who, again, if you saw just the offer go out, you had a similar reaction. You'd be like, it's a 3-star, right? Oh, it's a 3-star. It's not rated by a couple different platforms.
Yeah.
Let me show you a person, Sean, that Alabama wants, that Georgia wants, that a lot of schools want that is not being rated very fairly, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I watched this film, Sean. I'll be very honest. This kid, for me, just me, not saying this is a Notre Dame conversation. I'm not saying this is a Notre Dame take. Not saying that. I'm not saying I have any intel on this.
Okay.
But if this kid wanted to come to Notre Dame today, I would have taken him yesterday. I would have taken him yesterday, Sean.
Okay.
This kid's that good, man.
That's saying some things because I meant instead of Brayden Platt, I meant to say Cole Sullivan. But
yeah.
I just said 3 guys now that we love their film, and particularly in space and what they can do. So now we have Cameron Pruitt. Let's see what the kid has.
Cameron Pruitt from Theodore High School, Sean, in Alabama. I want us to get excited here, man. Let's just watch. Let's just watch. Let's just watch.
Okay.
Let's just watch.
Can I say shout out to the editor? That's the perfect first play to put on film.
Oh, how about that one?
Oh boy!
And he forced the fumble.
Oh boy!
Sean, my guy's listed about 6'2", 190 pounds.
Who's the dancing bear returning it though?
That's another great question. Another great question. I don't know.
I love when big guys get the ball.
Sean, this guy, I'm telling you, man, this is a rover. This is that guy. Intimidator. Here he is playing at 3 high safety here.
Cover 4.
Man, look, kid is an enforcer. Kid's an intimidator. Sean, there's a clip on here on kickoff return.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when it comes. It is one of the most disrespectful hits I've ever seen in high school football, man. This kid, here it is. Just watch it. Everyone watch it. Just watch it. Sean, I watched this film, man. My wife was on the other side of the room. I'm watching this, and literally I'm doing what I'm just doing right now. Oh my, what? Those types of noises, man. This kid is a missile coming from the second level. Brother. Cameron Pruitt, state of Alabama. Not rated high, but already has an offer from Alabama and several other big-time programs. This kid's good. This kid's good. I'm telling you, man. This kid can play. He can move. He's athletic, but he is an absolute missile on the second level of a defense. Absolute missile.
Hey, you can't let that dude tackle you on that pick 6. That should have been a pick 6, Cameron.
He is.
Great play.
Yes. You're not wrong about that.
Oh,
did you see that last one, Sean?
Wait. He stripped it and put it.
He put the ball out of his hands, man.
Yeah, that was an incredible play. That was an incredible play.
Sean, the best part about this kid, one of the nicest kids I've ever talked to. So nice, so respectful. Is planning a visit already to Notre Dame this spring. He'll be in South Bend. And I know people out there right now are saying, he's an Alabama kid. Notre Dame has no chance. Just hold on for a second. Hold it. Let's wait for the visit. Because this is a kid that I think could be a surprise Notre Dame fit. Someone just asked in the chat how big he is. He is 6'2", 195-ish pounds right now. I believe he fits best right now as a rover in Notre Dame system. He's going to be about 6'2", 210 pounds before very long. And then we'll see from there can his whole body hold 220 something pounds? I don't know. But all I know is it doesn't need to, man. He's a good football player, man. He's a good football player. He got me excited, Sean. There's some guys you watch the film, you're just like, that got me excited. This kid got me excited.
Yeah.
Because there's just not a lot of guys that play like this, man. I mean, every hit is just like he plays like every play is his last play. And I respect that so much. I can't even tell you how much I respect that trait. Because there's some guys that, they play half speed sometimes. They don't run down on kickoffs. They don't give amazing effort. This kid has tremendous effort as a football player, man. And he's another kid, Sean. I think he could play a little bit of safety if he wanted to. Like Thailand Singleton, he could play a little bit of safety if he wanted to. But that physicality, that ferociousness, that downhill nature, that's why he's a rover. That's why. He wants to get downhill. He wants to stick you, man. Here he is in more of a 3-3 alignment, getting downhill. Physical, man. Physical. No nonsense. And he finishes plays, man. He strips the football, creates big collisions. It's a good football player, man.
Once again, players that can play in space. You got to love it.
And someone asked, and I do think that it is a talking point, Sean. This was a kid that was recruited while Max Bola was on the Alabama staff. Yes, it is. So there is most likely a prior relationship there, which does matter.
So you mean Max probably brought his Rolodex with him?
You know, when people freaked out that James Laurinaitis offered, that Ohio State offered Peyton Pierce immediately after James made the decision, right? Or right before.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this is kind of the same thing a little bit, right? That's kind of how I feel about Cameron Pruitt, right? I mean, that's probably a guy they had a previous relationship with. A great evaluation, though, by the staff. Get on this kid now. Get him on campus and see what you can do. Because at the end of the day, if you end this class with, let's say they get back in with a Peyton Pierce, right? And they were able to close that one out. And let's say in theory you get a Thailand Singleton and that kid, Sean, you just got a lot of speed on the second level, man. Like, that's a lot of athleticism, man. That's a lot of athleticism.
And I'm sure Notre Dame fans are saying, yes, can we get them in and get them on the field?
Right.
Get them ready to play. That's recruit them, get them to commit, get them in, get them ready to play, get them on the field.
That's it, man. And I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it. So, yeah, Cameron Pruitt is one of my more surprising watches recently because, I didn't know what to expect. They offered him, and he's another guy, right? Offered by Al Golden. By Al Golden, the linebacker coach. Like, kid's 6'2", 190-something pounds. The heck, a linebacker. And then you see the film, like, oh, he's that type of dude. He's that type of guy, right? So have all that together, you're just like, yep, please come on down, Mr. Cameron Pruitt. If you want to come back down from the state or up from the state of Alabama, please come on up. He would be a guy for me, Sean. Again, I would have offered if he wanted to come to Notre Dame right this second, I would have been like, brother, you were a take 3 weeks ago. Come on down. That's how much I like Cameron Pruitt. We'll see, though. We'll see what the traction ultimately is. But is planning a visit. Should have something finalized here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited for it. I'm excited.
I think he can end up, because I think when Henry Tutu was at Tennessee, I want to say when he first got there, he was right at about 200. And then he transfers to Alabama. I think he's sitting at about 225 right now. Playing inside.
He was actually 230 before the season, man. He got up a little bit. Yeah.
He got it up a little bit.
A little bit.
So, yeah. I mean, that's somebody out of high school you can look at. Because when they had him in middle linebacker, I remember the first time he walked on the field, I'm like, yo, that's not your typical middle linebacker for Alabama. Like, that's like, he's a little bit smaller than the plugs the Alabama usually have behind the big boys.
Yep.
But you could see where the defense was evolving based upon what they were facing. And I think you might be seeing that in the recruitment here. Like, based upon what Notre Dame is facing and how their staff views how they need to go at these offenses. The recruiting should be reflective of what the staff's vision is moving forward and what they see.
No doubt about it. So, Sean, we have a couple more guys we wanted to get to. Again, we're not really prioritizing this list based upon how we feel about Notre Dame because a lot of these guys we don't know yet, right? We need to see if they get on campus, when they get on campus, how the visits go, all that great stuff. There's a lot to figure out with this list. But we're morely just putting out guys that Notre Dame has offered recently that are interesting, that you should keep eyes on because you never know what could happen. A guy that I don't have high expectations for, Sean, honestly, because this is one of the highest recruits at linebacker in the country. Like, I just don't know if this is a realistic one. This is Justin Williams, who's out of the state of Texas as well. He is from Oak Ridge High School, which is in Conroy, Texas. I mean, Sean, quite literally, man, kid's a stud. I mean, he's considered a top 100 recruit, I think, by 3 different platforms. Like, this is not a under the radar kid, right? This isn't a guy that no one knows about. This isn't a Cole Sullivan who didn't have many big offers until Notre Dame came in. This isn't a Cameron Pruitt who was not a highly rated guy. This is a very highly rated player. And I don't know if Notre Dame's going to have any traction here. I mean, there's just a lot of great schools coming after him, and a lot of great schools that has been on him for a while. But I mean, you see that speed though, right?
Yeah.
Like the kick and run a little bit. I mean, he's a good football player, man. He's a really talented kid. I don't know if Notre Dame is going to have a tremendous standing.
You get in the race. You never know. Let's see. Oh, man, did you see him destroy that offensive lineman right there, bro?
Sure did. The crazy part is that, Sean, he's not big right now. He's like 6'2", 195, 200 pounds. He's a smaller dude as far as his frame. So has a lot of frame weight to add to that frame, but he's got some pop in his pads.
You just tapped into something, Ryan.
Yeah.
Talk about the mentality it takes to play linebacker and how that shows up in film rather than physically guys just being able to run around that are already 6'2", 220, 225 in high school. Like when you're watching a guy that's like this at 190, and you say to yourself, I project him to be better than the guy that's already at the desired weight, per se, as I project him.
Yeah. So, Sean, there's two so the progression of playing linebacker, there's two main points of contact, right? So one is out of the trigger step, the ability to transition downhill and then read and react accordingly. The second is when you come to balance as a striker. And that strike could come as taking on blockers, or it could become as a tackler, coming to balance. What coming to balance literally mean is that you get your butt down, you get in a solid power position, and you're tackling or in your power position, you're able to withstand contact. That's where it comes. A lot of guys can do number one. Not a lot of guys can do number two. And I think that's what you see with Cameron Pruitt. I think that's what you see with Justin Williams. When they get to that second phase right there where they come to balance, they become strikers. And when you look at this kid, I'm like, if he has that much of a power profile and that much pop in his pads at 6'2", 200 pounds, imagine him when he's 220 pounds, man. He is going to be a violent football player. But to your point, Sean, that's all well and good, right? Yeah. That's all well and good, the ability to, want to do it. But the ability to be able to do it, to have that physical lower half, to be able to come to balance, play with good pad level, all those great things. But there's a mentality that comes into playing the linebacker position. That is not as teachable as the technical side, right? Playing with good pad level, playing with good bend, reading, reacting. Some guys either have that dog in them, for lack of a better term, or they do not. They don't. And I'll be very honest. As a linebacker, I like to think I was a pretty hard hitter, but I wasn't like, the biggest hitter of all time. I came to balance well, and I wrapped well, and I was a guy that I felt like didn't miss a ton of tackles. But then there's guys like this, right, that play just at a different type of ferocity that you can't really teach. You see his ability to just transition and get downhill and then get in that proper tackling position and then to bring pads with him. That's the rare stuff. I love when you ask me linebacker stuff, man. I love that.
This is an impressive young man. He's worth it. Like, even if you don't feel like you're in a good position right now, he's worth it. He's worth getting in, fighting to get him on campus, fighting to get him in for a visit. Selling his parents, especially the mom. Every mom wants to choose Notre Dame. I don't care what anybody says. So,
and one cool thing too, Sean, is because I agree. How do you know you don't have a chance if you don't try?
You have to try.
At the end of the day. And we'll talk about offensive line recruiting, I'm sure, in the near future, right? I'm sure we'll have that conversation. But it's really weird that there were a couple players that Notre Dame just offered after Harry Hiestand left that are very high recruits. Like, why were those guys on the board already, right? And no shade at Harry. No shade, because he's very particular in his process. And he's a good recruiter. Always has been. But why wasn't Brandon Baker on the board for Notre Dame already? Why wasn't Andrew Sprague on the board? Why weren't those guys on the board? How do you know you couldn't have traction with Brandon Baker? How do you know that? He all of a sudden became a good fit? Did he study in the offseason and become academically eligible? Like, what's the disconnect there? There's a little bit of a disconnect. So, yeah, I'd like that they offer Justin Williams. Again, it's an offer. It doesn't hurt to have efforts and to showcase what you can do and to see if there's any traction. If there's not, you're in the same place you were 2 weeks ago when you didn't offer him. Like, that's the same spot. It doesn't really matter. But, yeah, I like it. And he's a Texas kid, which you know my stance on. I always like adding some talented Texas kids to the board. So that's Justin Williams, man. Very talented player out of Conroy, Texas, out of Oak Ridge. They're also recruiting his defensive line teammates in 2024. Was a little bit more of a raw kid that Notre Dame has taken a deep look at. So we'll see as that obviously continues here, Sean. So Justin Williams. I want to move on now. Probably should have I did this one a little bit out of order. Just realized it, but we had an Alabama kid that we just did a second ago, Caleb Pruitt. We're going to go back to the state of Alabama, Sean. And one of the more popular high schools in the state of Alabama, as far as football goes, is Hoover High School. For people that follow high school football, I'm sure you know about Hoover. For people that don't follow high school football, do you remember that there was that show about Hoover?
On MTV, the coach ended up getting fired because of scandal. Now he's down in, I think, Georgia somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forget what the show was called, but there was a show that focused on Hoover during that time.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look at a young man named Bradley Shaw. He is a linebacker out of – yes.
It coincided right with Nick Saban arriving and like the rise of Alabama football. Very interesting. It actually was great promo for Alabama. Honestly.
It was. And I mean, Hoover historically has been a very good program, even after Rush. I think his name was Rush Probst, right? Isn't that 2 days? Someone just said in the chat.
2 days.
Probst.
Coach Probst. Yep.
Yes. Yep. So 2 days. Yep. And so we'll take a look a little bit at Bradley. We're going to take a look a little bit at Bradley Shaw. I wanted to make sure this video popped up, and we're good to go now. So this is Bradley Shaw, Sean, another talented kid, man. I mean, I think Antoine Johnson said this in the chat earlier, and I can't believe some of these kids are in high school at times, man. I'm just like, how the heck are they finding all these athletic kids to play football at the high school level, man? Some of these kids just look like they're college ready almost, man. Like just big physical dudes. And again, another kid, I think the one takeaway you get from this linebacker board today, whether it is a player that's on the board for Notre Dame, the priority board, or it's a guy that Notre Dame has just offered, all these kids can run, man. They can really, really run. I mean, look at this. Closing speed's fantastic from Bradley Shaw.
Nice.
Yeah, and you're looking at number 7. That is Bradley here. He doesn't do all the nice window dressing of like, here I am type of thing, but you'll see him all over the place. Just watch number 7 here. And, man, closing speed is the biggest thing. And just a reminder, we're going to hit the mailbag here in a couple minutes as well if you all want to start putting in some mailbag questions. Anthony, I saw your comment. I'm going to hit that during the mailbag if it's okay. Just want to get through the film real quick, and then we'll have plenty of time, my friends. Plenty of time. So now it's a little bit better vision here. You're going to see number 7 there. Go to transition. Oh, looks like a little tip drill here. Got a tip drill? Nope. Oh, he's leading the way. And poor kid. Poor offensive lineman.
Oh, man.
Oh, here he is. Now he got the tip drill here for an easy 6. He's a really well put together kid, though, man. Like I really like the lower half, Sean, on Bradley Shaw is like really strong. Like you can see it, right? Like he's got some really nice, he's got some really strong legs to him, which I think it matters, right? We talk about that power profile, the ability to come to balance. Like that's where that stuff really matters is the lower half. And you can see when he hits people, they usually go backward. They don't usually just stop. They usually go backward. Here he is at inside linebacker again, number 7. Number 7. I mean, just another good player, man. I mean, again, I don't know if he'd be high on the priority list for me, but continuing to just add talent to that board, which has been a spot that Notre Dame has done really well at the last couple of years. So, yeah, man, that's Bradley Shaw. And the last guy for today, Sean, and we'll get into the mailbag. I want to bring up Brian Huff, who is a linebacker out of the state of Arkansas, actually. Valley View in Jonesboro, Arkansas. My first question was, because Notre Dame's in on TJ Lindsey, who's out of the state of Arkansas as well.
Yeah.
Sean, what's the last player that came from Arkansas that went to Notre Dame? Any idea? I actually need to do some research on that.
Oh, man.
I don't know the answer to that, man. I don't know the answer.
I feel like the last player to come out of Arkansas.
Right. I said it. I was like, Arkansas.
That would be a great question, actually.
That might be a trivia question. I might start doing some recruiting trivia.
The first person that comes up with the answer should get something like a mug or something.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, sir. I'll tell Brian that, man. We should do that's a great idea. Great idea. Irish Breakdown. Weekly trivia. Winner gets an Irish Breakdown mug. I'm not saying it's going to happen because I am not the guy that makes those decisions around here, but I will allocate for it. I will 100% allocate for it, right?
Absolutely.
So Brian Huff, Sean, big kid, listed at 6'4", 225 pounds. Let me get the full screen on here so you all can see a little bit better. I think this is your true modern day Mike right here, Sean. Definitely can run, but it's that 6'4", 225, man. Like that is a big, big frame. And again, there's some pop in those pads, man. That running back was coming with force and just stalemated him at the point of contact. Absolutely stalemated him. Plays a little high, which I don't love, but just an easy mover, man. Absolute easy mover. You see it, right? Like he covers a lot of ground. Again, pad level's not great, but here comes a strip sack. I love when they tell you what's going to happen before the play even happens. I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised by what happens. And you're telling me what the play is going to be.
Ryan.
Yes, Sean?
Oh, man.
What? Oh, someone said Luke Jones. That's a good one. Offensive lineman. He was actually a starting offensive tackle for Arkansas.
Luke Jones did come from Arkansas. He did.
Ended his career at Arkansas. So good job, Mike. Good job, Jay. You don't get a mug, but congratulations. Maybe next week. Sean, did you have a thought, man? Did you have a thought?
Yeah. I see good plays, but then you guys have conditioned me so much to look at footwork. And I see plays where I question what you literally just talked about, a couple of prospects ago.
Yeah.
Like that gather step and then being able to explode and come downhill.
Yep.
But the size and the length is absolutely incredible.
This might be one of those kids, Sean. I don't know if you agree with this, but kind of how we were projecting a Darius Hayes, that like a Darius Hayes might be a Viper. This kid might be a Viper. This might be a Viper. Might be. I don't know if he's a true linebacker because he doesn't play with great bends. He's not like that type of dude. I think he's a good athlete. I think he's long. I don't think if I necessarily think of like springy, quick processor. Like that's not really what I see in Brian Huff personally.
No, I think that's you said it perfectly. You said it perfectly, right? Because I was waiting to see something to say, yo, that's it. But to see him not so much on his film, to kind of project where he's going to be at Notre Dame.
Sure.
Viper probably would be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, he might be that guy. He comes in as a Mike initially, and then you're kind of just like, hey, it's probably a Viper, which nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that at all. Just
do you count that? Let me ask you a question, man.
Yes.
You count that as a miss? Right.
As far as
if you recruit a kid and you say, yo, I think he can play inside, and then you eventually move him to Viper for whatever reason, do you say, man, we might have missed something in our evaluation if we're moving him?
I mean, God, I just read a comment which just makes me laugh so much. I don't think it's a misevaluation if he can be a legitimate football player at a different position. Like I think that's me on it. You know, I mean, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Like, is it a misevaluation by the position coach that initially had the thought? I guess technically, if you want to look at it like that. But I mean, if I recruited a Darius Hayes for a second, right, Sean? If I was Al Gold and I was like, a Darius Hayes is going to be a great mic for me, and then it turns out that he's more of a Viper and he becomes a really substantial player. Is that a miss? I wouldn't call that a miss. I would just call it his body developed a little bit differently, right? Like that's just kind of how I look at it. But yeah. It's a great question, though. It's a really great question. Well, Sean, that's the board for linebacker as it currently stands. That is the kind of higher pecking order at top. And then those are some of the players that have been offered more recently that you should keep a close eye on, that we don't 100% know what the full traction is, but we will see very soon in the near future because a few of those guys are already setting up visits. Some of them do plan to get up to Notre Dame. So we'll see as far as the traction is there. We're going to move into our mailbag next, so make sure that you keep putting stuff into the chat. We will hit those here moving forward. Don't go anywhere, obviously, because we'll hit your mailbag questions here. But before we do, if you could please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell because we'll be having a bunch of other shows this week. Make sure you stay up to date on the recent content. 5-star reviews if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform. I would genuinely appreciate it so much. I know Sean would as well. I know everybody at Irish Breakdown would. So 5-star reviews, very, very much appreciated. Go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll be having a lot more intel in the near future, obviously, when recruiting is about to open back up. We're in a dead period right now, but that is going to end very soon. But thank you all for tuning in to the Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. All right. So we have a bunch of recruiting questions. Again, mailbag questions, throw them in the chat. It could be, we can cover recruiting, obviously, if you want to cover any other Notre Dame topics, anything at all. Let's get it working, man. So from Tyler, Misguided Passion Binge. Tyler, I saw this in the chat earlier, man. I wanted to make sure I commented on it, but it's the most fantastic new name on YouTube history. Said mailbag question. Do you think Coach Marcus Freeman's opening comments were to try and signal to outsiders and recruits that Notre Dame isn't in a bad situation as the truth? I don't agree, but I can see that angle. I mean, Tyler, this is my whole conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing what Sean's perspective is on this, because we talked a little bit about it before the show, but we didn't get like super in depth on this. So for people that didn't hear the press conference today, there was open availability for Marcus Freeman and Jared Parker, obviously introducing Jared Parker officially as the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, former tight end coach at the University of Notre Dame, is now transitioning up to the offensive coordinator. And Marcus Freeman spent the large portion of the first part of his conversation kind of debunking some of the rumors, right, Sean? I mean, he had kind of talked about, I have full support from all the administration, Jack Swarbrick, everyone. There's some bad information put out there. And Brian and I will talk more about this tomorrow. There's not full honesty on Coach Freeman's part, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. But regardless, Sean, and I would love to hear your insight on this, I thought that Marcus Freeman was in an impossible situation with this press conference today. It's impossible. You can't badmouth the person that employs you, right? Like, you can't badmouth them. You have a job. You like your job. You need to keep that side of the coin happy, right? You don't poop where you eat, right? Isn't that a saying? You don't do that, right? So he wasn't going to come out there and be like, I don't have full support of from the administration. Like, he's not going to say that. I do think he steered a little too far one way in one direction. I think you could have handled it a little more political. But at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman was never going to badmouth the administration, and he shouldn't, right? Mm-hmm. That would be like me on the podcast. If something happened behind the scenes and me and Brian had a disagreement, let's say a verbal altercation, whatever, someone asked me about it, and I was like, oh, Brian didn't have my back. He's a terrible boss. It's stupid. Why would I do that for one? It's dumb
Yeah.
for anybody in that situation. It would not be smart. So do I think Marcus Freeman was truthful in every comment he said? No, I don't. But do I think that he had to do it the way he did it? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not quite once to as far as one side, but like he had to stand up for his boss. He had to. What was he going to say? Right? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he's an employee and he needs to act as such, in my opinion.
Man, it reminds me of my relationship with my dad. And, we're so open that I can tell my dad, like, come on, man, that's mom talking. Like if he has an issue or he has to make a statement about something, I can tell when my mom has come to him and said, man, you need to talk to Sean and figure out what's going on. Because when he starts talking to me, I'm like, okay, this is sounding like mom. This doesn't even sound like you. Like what's really going on? And that's the feeling I got today. I'm like, yo, this isn't Marcus. Like the just there were certain things was like, okay, this Marcus is always cool, calm, and he just kind of got outside of himself and his personality a little bit today. And that for me, that was the first telltale. And I kind of felt like, okay, this, you're using the same words that were used in that email. Like, come on now. Like you're using the same phrases that it came from that email. And that, no, if you're gonna go ahead and fall on the sword or take the bullet or whatever other phrase you might want to use, do it like Sinatra. Do it your way.
Yeah.
Do it in your own words.
Make it seem a little more authentic, right? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So from that standpoint, I just felt like, okay, it's like you said, it was unfortunate. He should not have been in that position. Honestly, I felt like somebody else should have been standing in front of the microphone. And you could tell it was uncomfortable because it was unsolicited.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, it's like someone asked about it, right?
you felt like the question was coming, and he kind of just jumped the gun. Like, let me just go ahead and say it, And it's like,
It felt forced, right, Sean? I think that's a good way to put it. Like, it felt very forced, didn't it? Like, it was just like, I don't know if he wanted to talk about this. And I agree, because I think someone said in the chat, Marcus Freeman is a cool cat, man. He's a cool customer. He is very eloquent speaker.
He has been 100% transparent, sometimes too transparent since he's taken the job.
Yep.
And I feel like that was used by those at Notre Dame, knowing that, to go ahead and pretty much say what was said was already said in the email.
Yeah.
And if the email didn't suffice for Notre Dame fans, I don't know what today does.
Yeah.
I think they banked on the fact that most people trust Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
And that's just it.
I just thought he looked very uncomfortable with that whole portion of the new press conference, Sean. Like, for me, like we talked about it before the show, right? If I'm Marcus Freeman, again, I'm not going to upset the people that are my employers. I'm going to say very politically that, the whole circumstance is what it is. I believe I have the full support of everyone behind me, all the administration. Yep. And we're moving forward, and we're happy with the product that we have, and we're excited about the future of Notre Dame football.
Yep.
That's all you have to say, right? We know what happens. I think the people know what actually happened, right? For the most part. I think the perception is what it is at this point. But unfortunately, Marcus Freeman did have to fall on the sword a little bit. And I think he maybe fell a little harder than he should have, to be honest. But regardless,
he was in an impossible situation. He didn't fall on the sword. He used the sword today.
True.
That was the surprising part. Not that he fell on the sword. He decided to pick the sword up and use it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a little shocking.
Yeah.
Because I think we all anticipated, if he were if he were to be asked about it, we were anticipating what the answer would be. Like we're not like you just gave all the reasons. We didn't expect today to be a lambasting of Jack Swarbrick,
It couldn't be.
administrators.
It couldn't
Like,
be.
come
Yeah.
on, like what are we talking? No one expected that.
Yeah.
But to say what he said, then to double down, and then to use the same phrases that were used in the email, it's like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, okay.
But at the end of the day, it's over with. I know we have to talk about it again tomorrow because I know Brian wants to talk about it, but I'm just moving forward, man.
I have closure.
Yeah.
No, I have. I know you guys have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
got
and
closure.
someone just said, how could you not comment on it, though? It wasn't that he commented on it. We're saying how he commented on it. That's all. Like, it's just whatever. All right, let's move on, man. At the end of the day, Jared Parker's the offensive coordinator. I'm hoping for the absolute best. I feel like the process to get to where we are was not smooth. It was bumpy. It was ridiculous at times. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pull for this program to be the very best it can be. That's all it is. And I expected his stance to be exactly what it was today. It couldn't be anything else. You can't throw your employers under the bus. You can't throw an administration under the bus. That's the point blank to it. I didn't expect him to do that. I think it's silly to expect him to have done that. Just is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on here, Sean, and hopefully we don't have any more. I mean, we'll probably have more of these questions at some points, but oh wait, here we go. We got more of these questions. All right. Johnny from the boot, Sean, I'm going to start with you on this one since we're just kind of hashing out the same things. Did y'all think Marcus Freeman looked tired? Obviously, I don't see him every day, but he looks pretty beat. I imagine if so, it's because of the latest drama.
Well, tired is fair because it's a lot going on. You lose the O-line coach, you lose the offensive coordinator, extensive search for your OC, however you want to characterize what happened last week. That's a lot. It's a lot mentally. It's a lot to deal with, being stuck in between a lot of different facets, in South Bend or at Notre Dame. And then on top of that, still having to fill the O-line coach. Now having to think about possible defections of other coaches if they decide to go to the NFL or other places. Yes, it's a lot. And, sitting down talking to Matt Bayless every day, figuring out what's going on with your players and just being a head coach to young men on a daily basis and having to be available to them. It's a lot. Like it makes me think like how do parents that have more than one child survive? I only have one and it's a lot. You're about to have a second one.
I was about to say I'm gonna let you know in a few months, I guess. But yeah. I mean, that's one thing, Sean. Marcus Freeman has a lot on his plate just off of being the head coach at University of Notre Dame, man. He's dealing with recruiting. He's dealing with filling a coaching staff. He's dealing with helping with player development, off-season strategies, all those things, man. That is exhausting. Coaching's not for everyone, man. It's not. I was a high school assistant coach, and I sometimes was like, man, I'm a little stressed, a little too thin right now, right? Like, I don't want to do that. And he has that working. He's also the father of 6 children? Does he have 6 kids?
Man.
On top of being a husband, obviously. He's got a lot happening for him right now, man. So, do I think that he looked a little tired? Yes. And I don't know how he could have looked anything differently, man. He's probably a little aggravated. He's probably a little aggravated. He's probably a little agitated, and he's probably exhausted. And he should be, because that is a lot of stuff going on, man. So props to Coach Freeman, because I couldn't get through what he's getting through right now. Just general. Like, I can't imagine. I'm having impulses right now, Sean. It's like, oh my God, I'm about to have 2 children, to your point, right? He's got 6 kids, and he's a husband on top of being the head coach at the University of Notre Dame. Like, what, man?
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I'll be honest with you. I immediately recognized what was happening in the moment. And emotionally, I kind of just understood everything is a choice in life.
Yes.
We all choose how to handle things, in life. And sometimes we mishandle things, or we could have handled it a better way. Some people might agree that Things could have been handled differently today, and some might agree that it was handled fine for what needed to take place. It's over. Like, it's closure. Fortunately, I have no emotional attachment to the situation, to whereas I'm like really upset about it to that degree. But
Sure.
yeah, I just feel like for the fan base, for the fan base, that was not it. Because basically, you just regurgitated what the same thing that the email said. That's the way it came across. You use the same phrases, and it's like Notre Dame and this fan base would have been very happy with Marcus Freeman and his genuine self handling the situation that way. That's it. Just be genuine. Like, yo, this is our new OC. We went through an extraneous process. You know, we got to this point. We didn't know that the road was going to turn and lead us to this final destination, but we're here. And it was sometimes bumpy, you
Yes.
know.
A lot of
But
times,
hey,
puppy. But yeah,
but we're here. And everybody would have definitely understood what he was saying. You didn't have to throw anybody under the bus.
that's true.
It's like, yo, we're Notre Dame. We're Notre Dame. We're moving forward. We're going to continue to recruit at the highest level, continue to play football at the highest level, and we're going to continue to educate at the highest level. You could have done all of that. You want to elevate Notre Dame today? You could have done all of that simply in a totally different way. Totally
Agreed.
different way.
Agree. Regardless, Sean, I'm happy for Coach Parker. I'm excited for Coach Parker. And I didn't want, again, because we're only talking about the opening comments from Marcus Freeman, and I totally get why we're having this conversation. But at the end of the day, this was about Coach Parker today, right? About the next era of Notre Dame offensive coordinator for the Irish. And I hope he does a great job. I really do. And I'm happy for him. And I know that he's excited about it. So
I like the combination of him and Gino Gaduli
Yeah.
better than having Tommy over everything. And then the quarterbacks not really having someone that they can go to work with them, especially if they're not on the field getting reps. Like, now they have someone specifically that they can talk to. And now, with it being a full conversation with the offensive staff, Jared Parker can go ahead and start lining up teams week to week and make sure that he starts to install what he needs to install by the time the spring starts. And it's as simple as that. Do I think that some of the language is going to stay the same? Yes. I think you and Brian did a great job last week talking about how the running game was probably going to be a little bit more diverse this year. Not as much duo, even though duo will be there, some outside zone, some inside zone. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I was thoroughly excited when they announced that combination was coming to Notre Dame. And I'm still excited. Still excited.
Yeah, the Gino Gaduli conversation, Sean, I think that adds a really interesting wrinkle into it. And I'm excited about that, man, because I look and I'm like, what he did with Desmond Ritter, can you imagine what he could do with some of the guys on Notre Dame's roster? Like, I'm excited about that. I am. Absolutely. I think he's a really good quarterback coach, and I am looking forward to seeing what he's able to do.
Yeah.
We had a question from DJ who said, mailbag, Anthony Smith. What kind of realistic chance does Notre Dame have? You might have covered it by the time you get to the mailbag. We actually did not feature Anthony Smith. DJ, I did a little bit more of guys that were offered, more a couple weeks ago compared to Anthony, who was just offered this past week. I had him in this week's recruiting roundup that I put out last night. Anthony's a very talented football player. He's out of the state of Texas as well. Realistic, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I talked to Anthony. He had a lot of good things to say about Notre Dame, but at the end of the day, like, the offer just came. So I need to see, is he going to get on campus? He doesn't have plans to do so yet. Does he, how good of a relationship does he develop in a short amount of time? Like, there's a lot of different conversation points that need to happen before I could say, yes, he's a great fit with Notre Dame. Yes, Notre Dame is high on his list. Like, you just don't know yet. Well, so check back in with future updates. I'm sure probably this time next week, I'll have a great update for you as far as, if he has a visit set up and all that great stuff, but just a little early with Anthony Smith. Interesting question here from Timeout Tom. I almost turned British there for a second, Sean. I don't know what happened there. From Timeout Tom, I thought it would take Nolan Ziegler an extra year to pop, but it seems he might be the first and potentially have the highest ceiling. Do you agree? So I guess, Sean, we're talking about the 2022 linebacker group, which is, of course, Jalen Sneed, Nolan Ziegler, Joshua Burnham, who now is playing Viper, and Junior Tuilamak, who's also playing a lot of Viper.
So what pop as far as becoming?
I guess like legit production is how I'm taking it.
Like reps. Just getting on the field consistently.
Reps and production, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's not shocking. It's not shocking. I think the position will point back to something that Al Golden said, or as Marcus Freeman said about Al Golden when he took the job, and how shocked Al Golden was at how intelligent the players are. But then he went on to talk about how much they're learning that they didn't know. And a lot of people were like, oh, wow. And only to come to find out that you're giving more information to players that already were questionable about how fast they play, particularly in space. And then we fast forward to this year where it was almost a season of, like, you have your freshmen and your development and your talent, but then you have things on your roster that you inherit that you have to find out, right? Maris had to play a full year healthy for them to find out, like, okay. That's why towards the end of the season, and you see him in pictures now with the defensive line and Al Washington on social media, like, I think they saw, okay, because they hadn't seen him for a full year. He couldn't stay healthy. So the greatest thing that happened was that Maris stayed healthy. Got a full evaluation for them to find out this is what we can do with him. This is how we can use him to the best of his ability to make us a better team. And I think the same goes for, I think J.D. Bertrand, for some reason, it clicked like after week 7.
Yeah.
And I think that was when he came back from injury, right?
Yes.
When he came back from injury, like something clicked and he played fantastic down the stretch. And to have him as a leader coming back next year, if he can continue that trend, that bodes well because now you have Ziegler and Prince Colley and all of those guys playing next to a guy that can do most of the thinking out there on defense, right? Like, that's your quarterback. He's sending the signals. You guys just go play.
Yeah. Just
go be natural and play. And that's the advantage. So from a linebacker standpoint, I think Coach Freeman never wanted to sacrifice his youngsters and their development, their full development, just because they might have been quicker and faster. Like, of course, you can see they're quicker and faster and all of the physical attributes. But that was the question. Like, do you rush? And we just talked this about Kingston, right?
Yeah.
Right? Does he go to USC where he knows I can play? Like, he can go play right now.
He's probably a starter day one, man.
Day one. Yeah. He's a starter day one. So do I go there because I know I can get on the field? Or do I go to a place where I know my development is going to be put at a premium rather than just putting me on the field, because of the numbers and things of that nature. So I think that was the benefit. Like, having the guys they had was a benefit for the young guys he had. It's a benefit for them. And I think Nolan Ziegler at another program probably pops halfway through the season if he goes to another school. But I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. Because we watched him.
Yeah.
We watched him. I don't know if you were there. I think I was there with Vince. And Vince and I both walked away from a practice over the summer and we both were like, Josh Burnham is going to be a dude.
Yeah.
Like, his first step is bananas. And I was just like, okay. I didn't even know they had switched him over, and I saw his first step. I was like, okay. You could just tell he was just too small.
Yeah.
He was just small at that point. Like, he didn't have the strength, some other things to be able to get around guys. So he was strictly trying to run around guys on his pass rush, because he was quick and he had speed. But once he came around, then he had to come back because the quarterback had stepped up in the pocket. Now, you saw him when you were at Syracuse, and the first thing you text back to us was, yo,
Kid looked massive, man.
this dude, Josh Burnham is massive. So
yeah,
now we start to see everything come together. And this linebacker class in 22 and 23, I think this is probably the season they really start to pop, as Tom was talking about.
Well, Sean, you saw Burnham in that picture at the banquet sitting next to Foskey, right?
Yeah.
Foskey was right around 6'5" at the Senior Bowl and 262 pounds, and he looked right there with them, man.
Right
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh. Joshua Burnham might be a legit like 245 this year. Like, he might be that type of dude, man. He's gaining weight quickly. He might be 250. I don't know. I don't know how much weight he's going to put on, but he looks good.
We'll be honest, right? That's the type of vibe you get when you watch Cooper Flanagan's film.
Yeah.
Right? You watch his defensive film this year,
yeah,
you're like, okay, if the numbers are okay in the tight end room, like, I know if I was on the defensive side of the ball, I would be fighting for him.
Oh, quick update on that, Sean. I actually talked to Cooper yesterday or the day before. Guess how much he weighs now? Guess how much he weighs?
Let's see. I'm going to say 247?
255 is up to.
Really?
255.
Yeah.
Yeah, good guy, man. So Cooper Flanagan is taken off of any sport in the winter or into the spring. He's just getting ready for football, man.
Yeah.
He's up to 255 pounds already. That dude might be legit 260 as a freshman tight end, which is pretty wild to think about. But yes, sir. Nolan Ziegler, though, Sean, for me, I think he's a very interesting modern linebacker because he came to Notre Dame. I mean, he was initially a rover, right? And he was like 6'3", 205, 210. Apparently, he's up to like 230 pounds, man. Like, he's a big kid now, right? So he can play Will. I wouldn't be shocked if Nolan Ziegler maybe a year from now is Mike in Notre Dame's system. Like, I wouldn't be shocked about that at all, right? With the athleticism and the size he has. Very interesting player, Tom. So is it unrealistic? I don't think it's unrealistic. It could happen. It could happen. I mean, we'll see how kind of the spring and into the fall works out. But, I mean, the kid's impressive. I mean, now he's 6'3", 230 pounds, length, athleticism. Like, I mean, it could happen. It could happen. I think that sophomore class is going to be huge for this team too, Sean, especially defensively.
They have to be.
Like,
they have to be. They have to be.
You need Burnham to do, to give you a lot of reps at Viper potentially, or at least some reps at Viper. Maybe Aiden Gabira's in that conversation. You talk about Tyson Ford maybe taking a step up. You talk about Jay Mickey taking a step forward. You talk about the linebackers, Jalen Sneed. Like, there's a lot of hope for that defensive class.
There is a lot of potential to be like, I guess it's probably a better comp, but to approach pass rushing like Georgia. Yeah. Like, Georgia just comes at you in waves, man. They just come at you in waves defensively. It's particularly coming off the edge, right? And they don't have – what was the last great – was Leonard Floyd? It was like, no, Leonard Floyd really didn't even play off the edge like that.
What do you mean, man? They just had the number one overall pick last year. Your boy Trayvon Walker.
Stop playing with me, man. Now, you were petty for that one.
I was petty for that one.
That was Ryan being petty, just in case you guys didn't know.
So shocking that he had 3.5 sacks as a rookie. Who would have thought that was going to happen?
And they have great players, but they just come at you in waves. And I think Notre Dame, if you can get 4 or 5 guys to get you 5 or 6 sacks, off the edge, like, that's.
Oh, you want a great trivia question, Sean? Great trivia question. Okay. The 2021 National Championship Georgia team. So 2 years ago, 2021, 2022 season. That Georgia team had Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, both went in the first round. Jalen Carter, who's going to be a top 5 pick this year.
Right.
They also had Adam Anderson, who was a dog before he got the off the field issues.
Mm-hmm.
Nolan Smith, who's going to get drafted this year. They also had Trayvon Walker.
Yes.
Who was the leading sacker on that football team?
Oh, man. Was it the Bill kid?
Robert Beal was the leading sacker on that 2021 team, man.
Trying to be himbo. Got him.
Sean, that defensive line is going to have 4 first-round picks on it. Another Nolan Smith who's probably going to go on day 2. And Adam Anderson was going to be a first-round pick if he didn't have the off-the-field stuff.
Troubles, yeah.
And yet Robert Beal was their leading sacker in the 2021-2022 season.
Yeah.
Great stat, man. Great stat. One that all right, extra credit. Ready for this extra credit? Who was their leading tackler?
That's a trick question because I would definitely go with number 17 right off the bat.
Not in Kobe Dean. Nope.
No, because I know that's too easy.
It's way too easy. Yeah.
I'm going to say the leading tackler was the guy that's currently playing safety for the Minnesota Vikings.
Lewis Cine is your answer?
Let's see. Was it Cine?
Cine was the first round pick of the Minnesota
of the Vikings. Yeah. I'm looking. Heck, wait a minute. Or was it the linebacker that Kobe Dean was screaming at in the championship?
Oh, we're talking about Channing Tindall?
Yes.
3rd round draft pick of the Miami Dolphins? Is that your final answer?
I'm gonna stick with Cine. I'll just stick with Cine.
You stuck correctly. It is Lewis Cine. Lewis Cine was the leading tackler for that team. Couple great trivia questions, folks. If you're doing a little bit of drinking one night and you want to ask a little bit of random college football trivia, there you go. Leading sacker on that Georgia team was Robert Beal. Leading tackler was Lewis Cine. Always funny. Always funny. How did we get there from Timeout Tom's question, by the way? That was wild.
That was a great question, Tom.
There.
Great question.
It was a great question. That was a long conversation. I don't know how we got there. From We Are Not Marshall, Sean, a question for you. Any word from Justin Scott? I know I
talk to him just about every week. We don't talk Notre Dame right now. All we talk now is basketball. That's it. I haven't talked to him about Notre Dame since our last conversation the week leading up to his birthday. Notre Dame is where they've always been until he takes visits. So I know he has one to Georgia, and the breakdown of Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State is probably going to come after Georgia. So I would venture to say hopefully Notre Dame gets the last shot.
If they get the last shot, I still feel really good about it, right?
Yeah, but we've been talking about basketball because they've pretty much played 3 classic high school basketball games, like back to back to back, that came down to like the last possession against like ranked teams, and they're ranked. So that's been our conversations, just laughing about games and seeing the games, things like that. Just keeping the conversation open.
Yeah.
And because no kid wants to constantly talk about the same thing over and over again. So
yeah, that's a nice little tidbit for recruiting people out there, right? How do you not get intel? Just talk about just nothing but football. That's how you don't get any intel. Oh, it's so funny. Sean, I have to ask you. I feel like I might have asked you this before, but I can't remember. Is Justin Scott a football player that plays basketball, or is he a hooper?
No, he's a football player that plays basketball.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so he's just down there doing the dirty work, doing all that good stuff.
Yeah. No, he's athletic now.
Yeah,
he's athletic, but he is, rebounds, physical presence. all of that. They have a young team, so he's one of the leaders on that team as well. So yeah,
Nice.
but it's crazy because they bring back the majority of that team next year. Like next year, I think they can literally have a shot to win state in football and state in basketball.
I wonder if Justin will be playing basketball next year. That'll be another conversation to have, right?
Yeah, if he, the conversation has always been about like, yo, not just this year, but like telling them like, yo, next year you guys can really make a run at it. And so that's always been a conversation, But of course, when he makes his decision, he'll have the opportunity to decide whether or not he's an early enrollee or not. So,
yeah.
I
want to post this real quick, Sean, because it just came across, and it looks like there is verification here. So just want to pop this up from Johnny S., who says, IB Nation, Jaden Mickey's mother is battling cancer. Please keep her in the prayers. I can post a link to GoFundMe.
I'll make sure we talk about that tomorrow as well.
Yeah, Johnny, thank you so much. I hadn't seen that news. First of all, foremost, I want to send all best wishes to the Mickey family. If you want to send that directly to me, Johnny, as well, if you're on Twitter at Rise and Draft, I'll make sure to circulate that on the premium message board as well. But Miss Mickey, we're pulling for you. I know she's a great lady. We follow each other on Twitter. Seems like a lovely lady. So anything we can do to support, please feel free to pass that along. So
absolutely.
Prayers and best wishes in that battle. Thank you so much again, Johnny, for making us aware of that. It's very sad. I hate stuff like that. All right. Man, this stinks. From Robert Bishop, do you guys see CJ Carr rising in the rankings throughout the year? No, because he's a Notre Dame commit. So as long as he stays committed to Notre Dame, probably not. But I mean, in all seriousness, Robert, I mean, CJ's also, I don't know, Sean, is he the type of guy that will really rise substantially in a like, I think he's just a really good player, and he'll always be just rated as a very good player because he's very nuanced. Like, he's very advanced is what I'm kind of saying,
He'll have the opportunity, right? Elite 11, he gets to the finals,
right?
Has good competition. That will pretty much be his opportunity. And then the 7-on-7 circuit, but I don't think it will have anything to do with what happens next fall. If he rises, it's going to be about his off season.
Yeah. And unfortunately for CJ, he could have the greatest offseason of all time, and he might still not rank as high because
he's committed to Notre Dame.
Yeah, we know how that stuff works. From Matt McCarthy, I know Thailand Singleton is listed as safety by some services. Do you think he projects better at linebacker, especially in the age of all these 4 wide receiver spread offenses? Matt, I think that he can play safety, like there's no doubt, but Notre Dame is looking at him as a rover linebacker type, and I think that's exactly where he fits. I think that his kid is a modern rover. You want those types of kids who have that quick trigger, get downhill, better coming forward than going backward. That's why I kind of think of Thailand Singleton. So, Sean, I mean, he's an ideal rover in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree with everything you just said. And I was about to say something. Let me think about this. Yes, I'll say it. Thailand Singleton is my favorite film out of the people we watched today.
He might be tough for me too, man. Yeah. He's
it's my favorite film today.
Yeah. He's exciting, man. He's a really exciting football player. No doubt about that. We had a question here, Sean. Interesting conversation, I believe. Jeffrey DeMunk, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. Do recruits question the authenticity of a coach who transfers to a new school and had recruited them before, and the old school is the perfect fit for them, and the new school is now the perfect fits?
I think, honestly, the authenticity of a coach for a lot of players happens pretty naturally, right? Because authenticity all the time, you can be authentic and just not click with a kid. Right? I mean, you can be authentic trying to introduce yourself to a young lady and it just doesn't work. Like, authentically, that's who you are. She just didn't like you. It's the same thing with these kids. You can be authentic as a coach, but another coach just stands out a little bit more, whether it's their personality or, them having a connection geographically or knowing somebody that knows somebody. I mean, that's kind of how we ended up with Jalen Sneed, right? Marcus Freeman played with and went to school with the coach's wife and then played with the coach. That connection led to the connection with Jalen Sneed, and they built the relationship, right? So was Marcus Freeman any more authentic than all of the other coaches, than Shane Beamer or some of the other coaches that were trying to get Jalen Sneed? Probably not, but usually,
Yeah.
most coaches are all. I mean, honestly, you just have to be a really bad person to not be authentic when it comes to recruiting, man. Like,
Yes. Yes.
I think a lot of coaches are authentic. It's just, the fits are what they are. And I think Ronan Hannafin is a perfect example. Ronan Hannafin is a perfect example. I think Notre Dame did everything they could to land Ronan Hannafin. I think Chris
Agreed.
O'Leary was truly authentic. Truly authentic. Dabo's personality just kind of makes you feel the way Ronan Hannafin wanted to feel with his college choice. So, and I think Drake Bowen was open with me about that. Like, Dabo is, I went to his house. I spent time in the back in the pool playing basketball. Like, he's very personable. Like, you see why
Yeah.
his players love him. But Marcus Freeman, just the first time I met him, like as great as Dabo was, there was just something about Marcus Freeman, and I'm sure both coaches were their authentic selves.
Yeah.
You just never know what the fit or the click is going to be for that said recruit. With a particular coach.
Yep. And I mean, for me personally, right? If a coach is telling me for months and months and months that this school is a perfect fit, and then they
Yeah,
jump to a different school and they try to sell the same thing, like the pitch has to be different, right? It can't be the
yeah,
same pitch anymore
yeah,
because you can't use the perfect fit thing and one school then use the same exact pitch at another school. Like that
you
doesn't
can't.
work. That's not
It doesn't work
authentic at
like that.
all,
Yeah,
right? Like, but so I'm going to use the Peyton Pierce thing for a second, right, Sean? Notre Dame is the perfect fit. James Laurinaitis is telling him, right? Perfect
yeah,
fit. You would fit here. You would fit, fit into the system, school wise. Ohio State, look, this could still be the perfect fit for you, but in a different way. It's not going to be the same as Notre Dame, but you might fit this part of it better than what you would have fit at Notre Dame. You might fit this part better. So the pitch has to be slightly different, but it can still be a perfect fit.
yeah.
It's going to be a little different because there's different fits that make difference. It makes sense for other people. So.
And that's why I decided to go, to talk about it in that way, because I mean, no, authenticity is not the question when a coach decides to go to another school. That's no. And Ryan would tell you, it's just there are some bad people in every walk of life.
Oh yes,
Flat out.
Yeah.
But regardless of whether or not James Laurinaitis is at Notre Dame or at Ohio State, Peyton Pierce was locked into him. Now, I don't think that changes because he puts on a different hat. What changes is the situation. Because what he's talking about from a Notre Dame standpoint is not the same as what he's talking about from an Ohio State standpoint.
Absolutely.
So, does that change things? Like, because as much as he loved James Laurinaitis, it was still Notre Dame. That was part of everything that he loved, right? So now Max Bullock or whoever the next person is, which I'm sure they're going to be authentic, personable. Can they match or make that same feeling come alive again? So that's and it's tough, man, because I think coaches get a bum rap for trying to climb the ladder with their careers, and is that a perfect? You know what? I don't know. I just don't. I just don't see it like that. I think Peyton Pierce is probably the perfect, relationship to talk about now because it's fresh.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is Notre Dame. Peyton Pierce loves Notre Dame. Just he liked James Laurinaitis. James Laurinaitis no longer being in Notre Dame might give some pause, but it does not deconstruct everything that Notre Dame meant to Peyton Pierce.
Right.
And Marcus Freeman is still there at the end of the day. Marcus Freeman is still the head coach. So
that's why I still think they have a fighter's chance for Peyton.
Yeah.
I don't think it's over or anything.
No.
Like it's a conversation instead of a ending, right? Like at this point, that's where it kind of comes down to.
Yeah.
Sean, let's bang out through a few of these quick because we do got to get out of here kind of soon. I just want to entertain Tommy Guns for a couple here. He says, Ryan Thailand, everything you say, every time you say his name, I'm hearing Tywin, as in Tywin Lannister. Maybe I'm just missing Game of Thrones. Sean, I just watched Game of Thrones again for the second time all the way through, and it's still fantastic, although the last 2 seasons were terrible. But yeah, still great show. Great show.
Never watched a full episode.
You need to go watch it, man. It's great. One of the greatest shows of all time, Sean. It is.
Look, you know how you can let something that your wife just loves and watches all the time?
Yeah.
It just doesn't hit the same for you.
Is your wife like it? Does your wife like it?
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And she just made it. I didn't even want to watch it. It was the same thing when Scandal was on. She was like over the top of Scandal. I was like, I'm not watching one episode because you do way too much. This show is, and it's the same because I'm so over the top about The Wire, and she's never watched an episode.
Wow.
Of The Wire. I was over the top about The Sopranos. She's never watched an episode of The Sopranos.
Man.
And then we have our shows that we watch together. So it's like that sometimes.
Sean, you need to give it a second chance, man. You need to get House of the Dragon just came out, season 1. You need to watch some House of the Dragon, man. There's a lot of good TV shows out there. Tommy, good taste there, man. He also, we mentioned SpongeBob earlier, so Tommy said, lives in the pineapple under the sea.
SpongeBob
yes.
SquarePants.
Yes. We had this question from Archer, 452, our resident Ohio State fan who's trying to recruit Peyton Pierce in the chat right now, who said, did Notre Dame hire an offensive line coach yet? They just offered Ian Moore today. That's the offensive lineman out of New Palestine in Indiana. Given that Harry Heastand didn't view him as a take, do you think the new offensive line coach will have a different philosophy skill set to recruit to? We also had Sean. Someone else asked about Ian Moore here. Yeah. So we're going to kind of do this as a 2-parter almost. Arrow said, mailbag, speaking of new offers, what do you think of Notre Dame offering Ian Moore? Why do you think Harry didn't offer? I'm going to be very honest about this. But I'm going to watch my words, okay? Very honest about this. Okay. Ian Moore, to me, who's committed to Ohio State currently, by the way, Indiana kid, it was viewed that if Notre Dame offered Ian Moore initially, that he probably would be in Notre Dame's class right now. Harry Heastand and the Notre Dame staff, I believe, or at least Harry Heastand, I guess, maybe it's different now, viewed that Ian Moore was good player, but maybe not that player, right? There were a couple of players that they preferred a little bit more than Ian Moore. So they never offered because the assumption was that he would have committed if they would have offered, basically, and if it was a take. I have not changed my opinion on Ian Moore personally. I think he's a good football player. I think he's a guard. And Notre Dame's recruited a lot of guards over the last couple of years. A lot of guards. He's now being touted as this, potential 5-4 offensive tackle. I don't see that, man. Just don't see it. I don't see it. I think he's a good football player. I think he's a little bit overhyped on the recruiting trail. We'll see if things change, obviously. I mean, could there be a systems conversation, Archer? I don't think the system's going to change incredibly much. I mean, they might run a little more outside zone than they traditionally did, but I didn't really think Ian Moore was like the best mover of all time. So I don't think that really pushes the needle. I think it's just more maybe the staff liked Ian Moore more than maybe Harry Heastand did. Maybe that's the conversation. But to the original question on Archer, no, they've not hired an offensive line coach yet. They're obviously going to be in that search. That's a big piece that needs to happen and figured out here pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, Sean. I don't know if you've watched Ian Moore's film. I think he's a good player, man. He's rated as like a top 50 player by like one or two platforms. I'm just like, man, I don't see that.
Yeah.
Personally. Just me. I don't see it.
Based upon what you conversations with you and Brian have led me to believe that Harry might have been right on this one. And to go to the first part of the question, is there going to be a shift in the philosophy? Yes. Harry's style of coaching is, it's different. But what it does build is it builds a camaraderie.
Yeah.
Like Harry's about, we move as a unit on and off the field, right? And you feel that on the field. And honestly, kudos to them because it was that unit that really turned the season around, in my opinion.
Right.
They took ownership and they said, we're going to have to dominate. We're going to have to step up and become the most dominant unit on the offensive side of the ball. And, you want to push back on certain games, that's fine. But that's what they did. From a recruiting standpoint, I think the next head coach, you don't want a guy, I'll be honest. I would rather have a guy that has a plan and recruits to that plan regardless of stars.
Yeah.
And, and like where a guy ranks, like a guy that's going to find a Sam Pendleton. Right? Because the Charles Jagasaws are easy to see. That's a no-brainer.
Everyone sees it.
Everybody in the world can see Charles Jagasaw is going to be good.
Dude, I saw him in person one time, and I'm like, yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Like, everybody can see that. So, no. I would prefer an O-line coach that can come in, that can teach, that can continue the legacy of everyone being on one accord and that room sticks together and has a relationship. And then from that, recruits to the vision that he has rather than to the stars in the recruiting service.
Right.
And that I understand why Ian Moore didn't get an offer. It didn't fit the vision. Didn't say he wasn't a good enough player to be at Notre Dame. He just didn't fit Harry Heastand's vision.
It's always been my stance, and it continues to be my stance. I think Ian Moore could be a good football player at Notre Dame at guard. I believe that the 2024 class needs to be more tackle laden than guards play. If you can have a 4-man class and just take 2 guards in this class, I think Ian Moore, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like it's functionally what Notre Dame needs. They need the Gerby Lambert types, right? Like they need guys that are for sure offensive tackles.
Yeah.
Some people are projecting him more as a tackle. I just don't see that. I think he's a really good guard at the college level. There's nothing wrong with that.
Brayden Platt has, I guess from a public perception standpoint, you could say, look, it's bad for the biggest school in Indiana not to offer what is perceived as the best lineman in the state of Indiana. That might be a 5-star. Okay, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, that's fine.
Sure.
But goes back to what Ryan said. Like, if you don't want him and you're scared that he's going to go ahead and commit, if you go ahead and offer, you just can't offer.
Well, exactly. I mean, if he wasn't a take, you offer him, and then he's like, "Oh, awesome, I want to come," and then you're like, "You can't right now."
Right. Like, we still want Gerby Lambert, and we still want these other guys. That's the biggest issue. That's the biggest issue.
Right.
So that's the tough part, man.
That is
right, because you don't. I think Blake Fisher. Big difference between Blake Fisher and Ian Moore from a film standpoint. So
you think Charles Jagasaw and Ian Moore, which is funny because Ian Moore is currently ranked higher on a couple platforms than Charles Jagasaw was by 2 or 3 platforms, which is just hysterical.
That's comical.
Yeah,
that's comical.
Yeah, it's really funny. Really funny. All right, moving on to another one. Brian Hockney asks, will we get to see your interviews with Jason Robinson Jr.? Brian, unfortunately not. I had interviews with Jason and his mother, Mickey, who they were both phone interviews. So I did not record those. They were not podcast interviews. I'll say this. If Jason Robinson does end up with Notre Dame, I'm sure there's a good chance that I might be able to get with him on a podcast, which would be awesome. But for now, it was just a couple phone interviews. But if you all want to check out those pieces, I had two interviews with him, two articles I wrote, I should say. One was about his decommitment from USC and why that happened now. What was the reasoning behind it, and his family kind of behind him on the move, and then his affiliation and his admiration for the Notre Dame staff is kind of what those were about. So I hope you enjoy those if you did get a chance to read them.
Yeah.
This question from Anthony Manzano. Is there a certain type of linebacker that you guys feel fits the Notre Dame defense in terms of the middle linebacker position specifically? Sean, I guess the question is asking, like, what fits a middle linebacker, right? So I think immediately, comparative to a will linebacker anyway, we'll just compare the two inside linebackers. The Mike linebacker is a little sturdier, a little bit more mass than a Will.
Mm-hmm.
Will can be a little more high cut sometimes, a little bit more of a rangier linebacker. The middle linebacker is really playing in more tight confines, right? Tackle to tackle is usually where the Mike is working. He's obviously the communicator of the middle of the defense. He's setting stuff up. He's helping guys get in proper positioning, all that great stuff, making sure that everybody's on the same page. That's kind of what the Mike does. Physically, you want to have a little more thump behind your pads. You want to be able to transition downhill quickly. You could be quick in areas, but more than anything, you want to be powerful and you want to be downhill and a communicator. Those are pretty much the biggest things, Anthony. I mean, body types can be anywhere from, and I've seen middle linebackers that are 6'1", 225 pounds, like the Roquan Smiths of the world. Or there could be some that are 6'3", 255, like the Leo Shalls of the world. Like different body types, obviously, can function the same way. It's more about style, right? Physical, downhill, communicator. Those are the things for middle linebacker for me.
You know what I like about my middle linebackers? I need them to be instinctive, right? I don't like middle linebackers that cannot get off blocks or either defeat blocks.
Have to be physical, man. Have to be physical.
By beating the linemen to their spots. And it's so tricky now, Ryan. Like I'm very empathetic to linebackers in today's game because when you get these smart offensive coordinators that give you a lot of window dressing pre-snap and at the snap, your ability to be able to identify, which comes from watching film, and then react. And then your eyes also tell everyone else pre-snap what's going on and what to look for. Yes. And that's a lot. That's a lot. You know, and offenses today, back in the day, you had a fullback, had a running back. Okay, it's going here, it's going there, Yes. But now, on the interior for these linebackers, it is a lot. It's a lot to look at. You can just look at the Super Bowl.
A lot of window dressing, man. A lot of window dressing.
Andy Reid did a lot to the linebackers of the Eagles. He did a lot to them, man. So as much as people want to talk about what the Chiefs were able to do, it's a tough task. So I would love if I could have a hybrid of Jalen and Manti in the middle.
Sure. Be a pretty good player.
Man. I'm not asking for too much. Asking for too much. If you give me a hybrid of those two, that's your perfect interior linebacker.
For real. Yep. Different, and that's a great conversation too. To your point, Sean, because those are two very different football players, but they can function in the same spot.
Yes.
It's just going to look differently.
Yes.
But the fundamentals are still the same.
Yeah.
Still the same.
Yeah.
Last question we're going to get to here because we got to get out of here for today. Mr. 2.0 said, mailbag, Sean could see it, but Brian Driscoll did not. So Ryan, are Pop-Tarts raviolis? I say yes. I answered this, actually, Mr. 2.0, in the chat. They are 100% raviolis. 100%. When you ask me what a ravioli is, it's two layers that are put together with a filling inside. It's a ravioli, man. It's a ravioli. Pop-Tarts are ravioli.
People are really upset that we agreed.
Yeah.
It's like
that's it, man.
It's all for fun, man.
Yes, sir. It is 100% a ravioli. Don't overthink it. It's a ravioli.
Do you eat yours? Do you eat yours cold?
Pop-Tarts? Yeah, I do. I don't really toast them ever. Yeah, I just eat them.
Okay.
I'm a strawberry Pop-Tart guy.
Facts.
Quick, let's do it back.
Facts.
Yeah, do it quick.
Facts.
All right, fellas. Well, appreciate you all. And ladies, my apologies. I always do that. I'm going to do it better with that, okay? I'm going to do better. Thank you all so much for joining the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Before you leave, you can please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. 5-star reviews are always very much appreciated. Thank you for joining our linebacker section of the podcast here today, as well as hitting the mailbag. Look forward to seeing you all again next week. I'll be back with Brian Driscoll tomorrow and the rest of the week on the regular edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We'll also, of course, have IB Nation Sports Talk tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Sean Stiers, with Jesse Stiers is on tonight with Vince. So make sure you check in on that as well. So for Sean, I am Ryan. Thank you all so much for joining the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.